Is he in?
Yes, Tim's with us.
Hey, Tim. Okay, we have a full board with new members, and our very first order of business will be reorganization followed by a work session. And then we'll get to the public input after, that'll be right after that, and then we'll get into the regular agenda. So, for the first item up on our work session, let's welcome the new members. Hi, John. Hi, Chris.
Hey,
Congratulations all.
you too?
And, well, congratulations or condolences, it depends on your point of view. The next thing up is board reorganization. So I think perhaps the last thing I get to do this round as chair would be, I'd like to take nominations, and I'd like to start by nominating Deirdre for chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first, do we have a second? Do we have any other candidates? In favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're on.
Do you want to trade?
Yo, oh yeah, you get the hot chair here.
Switch your name tags as well, please.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody would confuse the two of us.
I'm kind of spread out everywhere, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
All right, so I guess my first thing, besides spilling my coffee, is to ask for nominations for vice chair. And I would like to start by nominating Mike Walsh to be vice chair.
I will second that.
I'd like to see if there's anyone else that's interested
Is
as
there
well.
anyone else who's interested?
They're all running to the
Tim
door.
Hall.
Yeah. This is yours, I think. Oh, this yours.
Not hearing any.
Oh, not hearing any jumpers for the opportunity.
Tim?
This is me.
Tim going once.
Go once, Tim.
Tim?
John.
I'm all set. I think Mike would do a great job.
Yeah.
I do too.
Thanks a lot, Tim.
Elected by acclaim.
All right, I'd like to take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Aye.
Are you opposed?
No, I'm not opposed. I was saying aye.
Okay. Okay, then, thank you to Mike for being willing to step forward.
Thanks,
And
Mike.
then, my next thing I would like to do is nominate for clerk, Mike Raisbeck.
Okay,
Unless anyone else is
I can read.
interested.
I'll second that.
Anyone
Okay.
else like to read? No?
All in favor?
Dan was good at that.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, we're there.
Okay, so then, I also want to thank you for stepping forward again to run, and thank you for stepping forward to run. And I also want to thank Nancy for her long, lengthy service and well-deserved break from service. And also thank Doreen Deschel for stepping forth and
Yeah.
putting her name in the ring and taking an opportunity to try to be involved. And hopefully she'll stay involved and find ways to continue to participate. After that, next up is liaison and representative appointments. So we have 10 different committee appointments, and I would like to propose an additional one to create a policy and procedure subcommittee. I feel like that in the last few meetings, it's been identified that we have a maybe not enough policies and procedures. They could use some clarification and some updating in some cases. In some instances, there probably aren't policies where there may need to be. So I would like to add to this list of committees Policy and Procedure Committee, Subcommittee. I guess we'll get later to the open meetings, but I think that I would like there to be either 3 or 4 people on this committee. That's what I'm imagining. If other people have different ideas, I'd love to hear them. But maybe 2 or 3 members from this committee, and I haven't reached out to anyone because I wanted to discuss it with this group first, but I thought maybe it might be worthwhile to have an emeritus planning board member, someone who's served in the past and for a long time and has a lot of knowledge of kind of where the bodies are buried, as the case may be, and could serve helping. And then what I imagine is we have the start of some collation of our policies here that were sent to us via email by Evan over the last few days. And so that would be a good starting point. And then we have some suggestions from Chris of ways to think about improving those policies or clarifying. And so what I think is if we started with taking the ones we have and working on them, and then if the subcommittee it would have to be posted meetings, they'd have to be open meetings, and maybe if they could meet, I don't know, whatever they decide, and come up with recommendations. If there's disagreement, maybe the committee could come up with 2 different versions of things, and hopefully maybe by, I don't know, what would be a good timeline, but certainly at the latest, I would say fall, maybe the deadline for posting things to fall town meeting, that then if there was things that needed to be addressed in the bylaws or the zoning laws, we could make those adjustments at that time.
Okay, and I think there's one other here that's not on the list,
Oh,
which is the master plan
yeah.
implementation committee.
Yep. Okay, so that being said, there's then 12 committees, and there's 8 of us. So I would like to ask that people are thoughtful in their volunteering for these committees. I've noted in the past there's been a lot of committees, liaison appointments, whether voting or not, where the attendance has been spotty or non-existent to those meetings. And I think that our ability to work together and collaboratively with each other and with other committees in town is definitely improved if we're interacting with them and keeping the lines of communication open and bringing back to us the ideas that are brought forth by those committees that may have some indirect or direct impact on us. So I know CPC only meets usually 2 or 3 times before each town meeting. So it's kind of more of an ad hoc committee, and that if anyone doesn't know what it is, they decide on the spending of the CPC money that comes into town, and that has to be spent on housing and open space and historic development or historic, I don't know. And then the Housing Advisory Board advises for affordable housing projects and the affordable housing plans. Vinyl Square Committee, you can probably speak better than I can.
Yeah, that meets monthly, and that is pretty much major discussions or anything in North Chelmsford, typically. Any type of business that's happening up there, just updates every month.
Mm-hmm. And the Housing Advisory is more ad hoc as well. In fact, they meet quite infrequently, I believe.
And master plan meets quarterly.
Quarterly.
Yep.
Center Village Committee meets a few times a year, I think, when they can get a quorum, and having a voting member from the planning board who actually attends makes the having a quorum more in range. NEMCOG meets monthly.
Once a month. That's a really important group, and I've been doing that. I'd love to hand that off to somebody else to get involved.
What do you have, Zoom? Or do you have
Yeah,
in
it's
person?
been Zoom, but they're trying to get in, I've never gone to a meeting in person. I don't miss the meetings, but I feel like someone could do a better job of,
Representing us.
yeah, I think so.
Okay, and then the non-voting liaison appointments are BPAC. What am I? I'm having a blank.
Bicycle pedestrian
Yeah,
advisory committee.
Pedestrian bicycle, right, thank you.
it's the bike rack people.
I don't really know anything about how often they meet. Evan, do you?
Probably monthly.
Monthly? Historic Commission, I think, meets monthly.
Monthly.
Conservation meets twice a month, I believe. But they're on Zoom, so you can watch the meetings. Board of Health is not on Zoom, meets monthly. And ZBA meets twice a month, I think,
Yeah.
Once a month.
once a month.
So the non-voting ones are ones that have been on and off your list over the years.
Right.
You may decide that you don't need any representation. It's entirely up to the board.
Does anybody have a thought about that?
I could say that from having actually attended quite a substantial number of Board of Health meetings, most of the time, what they are discussing doesn't really impact what we're doing. And they're pretty good about hollering if they have something that they think will involve us, they'll let us know. Sue will let us know, or somebody will let us know. So I don't think you necessarily need to go to that one. Now, I've tried to convince them a few times to go Zoom, but they don't seem to like the idea. I don't know why not. Do you have any idea why they don't?
I don't know. I don't know if they don't have the, like, if it's like a conflict with resources.
That could be.
About
It
Zoom.
may
Yeah.
be. I've just, because sometimes it's darned interesting. Chasing rats around town. Okay.
But I agree with you from a. like,
Yeah.
I've
You've
done-
been to them,
yeah,
too.
Yeah, and I have, like, you know, I'm also the liaison with, on the FinCom,
Yeah.
right, to the Board of Health, so.
Yeah, you can let us know if we need to get involved.
Yeah, like, I think, like, just my relationship with Sue, it's more, there needs to be something, she'll bring it to my attention
Yeah.
versus.
Right.
Exactly.
I've,
She's been pretty good about that.
yeah, I did it last year before you came on, and I feel like she's shot me emails on several occasions when there was something.
Right.
And the other thing about there is you don't really know what they're doing, because they're flipping through,
Yeah, they have an odd meeting order, don't they?
they're flipping through their papers that you don't have, because
Yeah.
they're not open for you to have, and so you don't, they're like doing, I don't know what, about their incoming and outcoming correspondence.
Yeah, that little thing.
Okay, so maybe we'll take that one off.
All right. And as for the master plan, seeing as I was on the master plan committee anyway, I'm perfectly happy to remain there.
Okay. Are there other ones that other people have a particular interest in? Mike, I assume you want to stay on the Vinyl Square?
Yeah, I would love to stay on the
Yeah,
Vinyl Square Committee
If
if
that's okay?
anyone else wants it.
How about Senate Village? Could I get on that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
As long as I pass off NEMCOG on some.
I'll take MCOM.
You,
for
it's
I
good.
will, if I
Yeah,
can
it's
zoom
good,
in on
yeah,
that.
it's great. They are trying to
Unless
get,
someone else wants it, like.
I mean, I wouldn't mind doing it either, but I'm happy to have you do
Yeah, and
it.
I mean, you can do
I'd
it.
love
No,
to do
I
it
was just- I know
sometime,
he
but
was trying
maybe
to
you
take it off,
get
so I was just
your
trying to
year
Why
find
don't
out.
you do it?
in the can.
Yeah.
Which one are we talking about?
NEMCOG.
NEMCOG. I mean, that's available anyway, so we could all, you can get in there if you want.
yeah,
It's on-
George
it's on
goes.
Zoom, so
George
you-
Yeah,
still
George
goes.
always attends.
Yeah.
I would love to do the conservation.
I thought you might.
Good.
All right, and Housing Advisory, maybe I'll do that.
Deidre, I can help you with that, if you can't make a meeting.
That would be great, because they meet in the middle of the afternoon, I think.
Tuesdays.
Yeah, they
too.
usually meet, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, what about the bicycle and pedestrian? I've never heard a liaison report
Probably
on
not
that.
as critical as it once was.
No, right.
Okay, so maybe does everyone feel comfortable with scratching off that?
Yeah, and they'll holler if they have something they want us to deal with. I remember back 10, 12 years ago, we weren't taking bicycles and that kind of transport into account, and they rattled our cage until we started putting a liaison there. But then we worked it into our rules and our practices, and all the big projects now have a bike
Square,
rack and
yeah.
stuff like that, so I think we could probably step away from that.
Okay. So who did we say was gonna do historical commission? No, we didn't say that yet.
No.
Anyone have a hankering for that one?
Well, do they necessarily actually, well, this is a liaison appointment, so it really has to be a planning board member, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right, I'll do that. I'm almost in
And
the
you can
historic
t-
district.
Talk to Nancy, because she's,
Is she gonna go on back on that?
well, I don't know if she's gonna go back on it or not, but she's quite familiar with them.
Okay.
She may be able to help you out.
And then, what about the ZBA? Do you have any interest in that, John?
I will do that.
Have you ever done-
I've never attended. I may have attended like once or twice in my life. but,
Same.
Yeah,
So John will do that one?
Is that okay, John?
sure.
Is there anything else that you would like to snatch from someone else?
No, if
Have a particular interest in?
if you need help with CPC or if that policy and procedures committee is going to be part of that top list, then I'm willing to do either one of those. Or
Okay.
So who's doing CPC?
I think, why don't we have John do it?
Yeah.
John.
Chris is gonna do conservation, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so I have John for CPC, me and Tim for Housing Advisory, Mike Walsh for Vinyl Square, Paul for Center Village, Anita for NEMCOG, Historic Commission, me, Conservation, Chris, ZBA, you okay doing that too? CPC, like I said, it meets so irregularly. And then what's CEAS?
Clean energy and
Clean energy,
sustainability.
right, okay.
I was with them. I missed a lot with those guys.
Okay. Is there anyone who has a particular interest in that?
In clean energy?
Yeah.
Well, I will certainly do it if it's, lacks somebody to
Up
do
for
it.
grabs, yeah. That'd be great, if you don't mind.
Yeah, they're a pretty energetic bunch.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
So on the policy, who's on that one? Are you recommending?
Oh, so the policy, I was
And procedures.
thinking, Chris seems to have a lot of ideas.
So obviously, I don't want to be on that one.
And then I was gonna suggest, well, I was originally gonna say Anita and John and Mike, and then a +1 of a emeritus person, but I think
Mike
that.
Raisbeck.
Mike Raisbeck.
Yes. Just want to clarify.
Did I see fear in your eyes?
I just want to see if.
But now I feel like we've loading up on John, and Mike and Anita, I don't think was anxious to do it. So maybe Chris and Mike and maybe 1 + 1? Do you think that would be,
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it works.
and then maybe you wouldn't have to do, post the meetings, because there'll only be the two of you.
2 or 1 or 3?
2 plus a emeritus person, like a George or a Sue
Nan-
Carter or Nancy.
Yeah.
And that is going to make policies and procedures and bring it to this board.
Yes, they're gonna make
For approval.
recommendations.
Okay.
They're gonna collate, update, clarify,
And clean them up.
and clean them up, put them together in a more usable form, and bring them to us for approval.
Okay.
Okay. So now on to
Just
Paul.
a quick question. Who would lead that team?
Do we have to have a leader? Guess so.
Didn't know if it needed.
You can let the group pick its.
Yeah, let the
pick a-
let the group pick a leader. That's a good idea.
How many, we got 3 people on it? Mm-hmm. Just make sure it's an odd number.
Yep. Okay, so now we're on to Paul Haverty. Are you gonna present something about this case?
Yes, I'll try to be as brief as I can. So this is a case that just came down from the Supreme Judicial Court. It involves an issue with the Southborough Select Board. And they had on their normal agenda a time for public comment, similar to what you have in your agenda. So in this particular instance, there was a resident who waited about 2.5 hours to speak in front of the select board, and with the intent of being critical of the select board members. She got up to speak, and the chair basically interrupted her, told her that she was required to speak in a manner that was courteous and professional. She disagreed with that. She started accusing them of numerous open meeting law violations, which were actually correct. I think the case says that there were like 30 prior open meeting law violations that had been committed. But the chair essentially accused her of slander and told her that if she didn't desist, that she would be removed from the meeting. He then closed the public comment period and basically went into a recess. There was some back and forth as to what happened after it was closed. They did catch on the video camera that the plaintiff basically accused the chair of being a Hitler. So that was, sort of a little bit outside the bounds of normal conduct. And the chair was relying upon a policy that the board had with regard to public comment. And I think it's probably helpful to go through some of this. So their public comment policy stated, the select board recognizes the importance of active public participation at all public meetings at the discretion of the chair on items on the official agenda as well as items not on the official agenda. All comments from the public should be directed to or through the chair once the speaker is recognized, and all parties, including members of the presiding board, act in a professional and courteous manner when either addressing the board or in responding to the public. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressing the board shall state their name and address prior to speaking. It is the role of the chair to set time limitations and maintain order during public meetings, as it is important to the board to allow themselves enough time to conduct their official town business. So far, that's fairly acceptable, except for the professional and courteous manner. Goes on to say, if included on the meeting agenda by the chair, public comment is a time where town residents can bring matters before the board that are not on the official agenda. Comments should be short and to the point, with the chair ultimately responsible to control the time available to individual speakers. Except in unusual circumstances, any matter presented under the public comment will not be debated or acted upon by the board at the time it's presented, which is a very good provision to have in there. But then it goes on, all remarks and dialogue in public meetings must be respectful and courteous, free of rude, personal, or slanderous remarks. Inappropriate language and/or shouting will not be tolerated. Furthermore, no person may offer comment without permission of the chair, and all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting. So that was the problematic portion of their public policy. So the SJC took this up after the plaintiff filed to Superior Court, went up to the Appeals Court, then went up to the SJC. The SJC reviewed the state constitution, particularly Article 19, noted it was drafted just after the Revolution, noted that the public comment leading up to the Revolution was actually quite rancorous and offensive towards public officials, and felt that that was something that was intended to be protected under Article 19. So ultimately, the end point of this case really is that people are allowed to come up and actually be rude and discourteous and potentially slanderous. So the court didn't actually address that issue in their decision, but what it noted is when it's talking about public officials, that the standard for determining slander or libel against a public official is one that requires actual malice. So it is a higher standard, which means that a certain amount of additional discretion is required, and you can't simply say, well, I think that's slanderous, therefore I'm shutting you down. Mm-hmm. What's very important about this decision is that the SJC found that the chair, and it didn't get to ultimate liability, it remanded back for further proceedings, but what it did do is reject a claim of qualified immunity, which is something, that public employees are frequently able to establish, but they said that this right for people to speak freely to public boards is so well established that nobody should have been under the impression that they were allowed to stop them from doing so. And therefore, this select board chair is potentially liable, personally, for damages to this citizen. So it's a very significant case. It does note, throughout it in multiple different portions, that doesn't mean that you don't have the right to control your hearings, that you don't have the right, to limit discussion to certain topics at appropriate times. You have the right, certainly, to limit the length of time in which a speaker can speak and set that and make them stick to only subjects that are on a specific agenda topic. If you have the open forum, though they have a lot more leeway. So this is a decision, that you need to be cognizant of and recognize that, you are limited in what you can do in preventing somebody from speaking.
So I would like to propose that we have a policy about our guidelines for.
I don't think, do you have a policy on this
Right,
currently? So it's,
right.
it's good to
I
put
would
something
like-
in place.
I
We
would
just
like
have to make
develop
sure
one.
you don't go overly restrictive with it.
Right.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Because you said they closed the public comment, right? So they
Correct.
shut it off completely. They said, we're done.
They took a recess
But no, but
in the meeting.
Well, they took a recess and threatened this person with removal if she did not leave voluntarily.
But had they, if obviously something got heated and people were, could they have said, why don't we continue this public comment for another day? Would that have been okay? At least that way, kind of gets people to
Yeah,
walk away.
I think it depends. First of all, I think it's very helpful to have in your policy a timeframe.
Time.
Yeah.
Right. So if you limit comments to 3 minutes, say, right, and they're going over, you can say, listen, we've only allotted 3 minutes for each speaker. If you want to bring this up at a future hearing, you're certainly welcome to. That would be one way of addressing it. I think ultimately, if it ever got to that, it's really going to be based upon whether or not the intent of shutting down public comment was to prevent them from having the opportunity to criticize the board, or whether or not it was simply, it was really necessary in order to bring the hearing under control.
Didn't we just start having that, though?
We did.
Yeah, it was, earlier last year.
Start having.
Do we have to have it?
We wanted to have it. I wanted to have it.
But now after hearing this, do we?
Well, but this would still apply to things that are on an agenda item. So if somebody came in here and wanted to talk about, a project that is before you, and they got up and they wanted to criticize board members, they wanted to criticize the applicants.
Or a project that's in front of us, not
If something
general
that's on the
public.
agenda, right.
But we just opened up for the general public input before the meeting.
Right, you're not required to have general public
So
input.
we can take that off the board if we
You
want.
can take that off the board, but it's not going to eliminate the need to be aware of the
During
limitations
the
set forth in this
negotiation.
decision.
Yeah, I have a question. You've observed as many of our public input sessions as anybody else. Do you see anything in the way that we're actually conducting the public input sessions that you think might be problematic?
No,
I think, my feeling is we're in pretty good shape
yes.
with what we have been doing, but
Time limit.
sure would help to have a written policy, wouldn't it?
I also think that we should stipulate in the rules, whether we say them at the beginning of each public input session or not, that there is not going to be any back and forth. We will not be responding
Yeah.
to what you bring to us.
That part is very important to have in there, because that can lead you into open meeting law
Right.
violations.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
So it's helpful to make people aware right from the beginning. You'll take comments, but you're not going to respond to them. And if
Right.
you deem at some point in the future
put 'em
that
on the
it's
agenda.
necessary to have an agenda item, you will schedule it.
Yeah, like being, asked to apologize for something,
Right.
like happened at one of our meetings.
So starting out for a policy would be time limit, stipulating that there won't be any back and forth, and that it pertains to taking input on items not on the agenda.
Right. Like I said, some of the stuff that I quoted in here is actually useful.
Yeah.
You could probably use that, as a basis
That's
for
for the
your policy.
open meeting part of it.
Right.
Well, it's for all of it, really. I mean, it applies to any portion of your meeting.
But if we have public comment on projects,
The same would apply.
you still don't respond?
No, you can respond to that, because that's an agenda item.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what that's what I was,
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
trying to
Right.
make sure that.
Yeah, it would only be
Yeah.
on the public policy.
Just the
portion.
public, normal, open, okay.
Correct.
So we have quite a few things left on our work session list, as was pretty easy to predict probably. But it's 7 o'clock or it's after 7 o'clock, and we had posted the meeting to start at 7 o'clock, so I think we should shift, and then we can come back at the end if we think there's,
Do you need me for any
I
of
was just going to
that?
ask you if, do we need Paul
I would prefer to have Paul for the.
for the open meeting law discussion?
Yeah.
yeah.
Do that now.
Should we do that now? Is that,
Is
I
that
mean-
okay?
Do we need to make a motion
Put
to
a time cap
extend?
on it.
Okay, so it's like 7:02. How about if we say we'll
15?
wrap it up by 7:15?
Yeah.
Which means pushing the rest of the meeting back to start at 7:15, so I apologize to people who came here to speak about something that was posted for 7, but, okay, so regarding the open meeting law, so in the last meeting and the meeting prior, so you guys were probably aware and present but not participating, John and Chris, we had an issue that arose that we had met, the board had met as a couple different subsets, each of 3 members, to discuss a project with the developers. And it was meant to be kind of a in-person version of a site visit, so there was the expectation that it was, the presentation of the information to us, and we were receptacles of that information. But there was some discussion that ensued that got us into at least the edge of the open meeting law and a potential violation. So we decided to take that opportunity of this coming to our attention to make a policy or review our policy on meetings that we hold with others not on the board, so that we can be clear that we don't stray into that troubled area again. So I don't know exactly know how we want to proceed, but I think that at least there's a couple different things. One is that we need to think about, and one is site visits, one is meetings with developers, one is conversations with abutters and townspeople regarding developments. And I'm not sure I see any reason that we should have different policies for these various things, but my thought is that maybe we should just make it the rule, as Mike, I think, proposed last time, that they're informational only. We don't respond. If someone's telling us information, like we do on site visits, the developer tells us they're going to take down this building here, and they're going to have this berm here, and, we're...
Question though, isn't a site visit, isn't that usually like a posted and,
Usually it is.
right, so isn't that part of, isn't that?
It's posted, but it's not a public hearing.
Okay.
So you're not taking testimony. You're allowed to get information regarding location. This is where the building's going to be. This is where the site access will be. This is how close it'll be to the property line. But information that's more, this is what we're planning on doing. This is where we're going to go with this. You can't really take that. You can't have offline comments with
Back and
developer, with neighbors. It has to be simply, limited to the specifics of the location of the building, the location of driveways, things of that nature.
I'd like to make another small point, which is, in general, a site walk takes place on private property. And the people who own the private property are under no obligation whatever to let the public onto their property. Some would, some wouldn't. But that basically says what you're looking at is not really in any way, shape, or form a meeting of the planning board at which public can participate or even be there. And that's just a limitation of the private property as much as anything else.
Wouldn't it make sense to also have minutes, so that way you know what's discussed?
Or maybe like, I guess it's not much different than a minute, but like a description of events that happened.
Notes.
Notes, yeah, like a report back kind of thing.
If I may,
Yeah.
usually the site visit, as Paul indicated, is you're physically on the site and they're pointing out what they've already presented to you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you need minutes. Nothing's been discussed.
Right.
Nothing
And
should
let's-
be discussed.
And let's
Right,
also,
but
just
yeah.
for clarity, the board never did a site visit. Individual board members did site visits, but the board never voted to do a site visit. So I think that's what you're talking about here, is board business.
Yep.
Unless you're going to extend beyond board business and you're going to create policy or regulation that restricts what individual board members do. That needs to be clarified.
What you just said, though, about showing information that was already presented, I think is the important thing.
Yeah, they'll mark out the corners of the building, they'll mark out the parking, the wetlands will be marked. Whatever the board wants to mark, sometimes there's a balloon for height.
But it's no new
It's
information.
it should not be any new information, right? It's because the board physically wants to go out and truly see what 100 feet setback looks like between a residential property and a commercial building.
I mean, typically, they hand you a set of drawings when you come into this site walk, and you're walking around with this big pile of paper.
But procedurally,
Notes, yeah.
the hearing is open, like this evening, you'll get a presentation, and then the board would schedule a site visit. So you would have already received the material, the presentation, and it's literally a physical walkthrough.
And when we schedule the site visit, we can have more than 4 there, more than 3. The entire board can go at that time.
Absolutely, yes.
However, prior to that, for the open meeting law, we can go all the way up to 3, is that correct? And I know last meeting you suggested we go to 2 or 1. We've
So-
done that in the past where we've met, but we never exceeded 3.
But that was not a.
It wasn't
board
posted.
voted-
No, it
It wasn't
wasn't.
a board-voted site visit,
It was not a voted site visit.
right.
That's a separate question.
Okay.
But even if you had 1 or 2 or 3, if you then follow that up with another meeting on the same topic with 1 or 2 or 3, especially where new information is being presented, that's where you get into the open meeting
Correct.
violation.
Yep.
But if it's
So-
a site visit, whether it's a board or individuals, even if it's, I mean, it shouldn't be new information.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and it'd be
So then-
incumbent on the board members to not solicit nor accept new information, not to get into the conversation.
Right,
That's our obligation as board members.
There's a couple ways this comes about. In the past, board members have, on their own, have driven through a site prior to a meeting. That's not a site visit, that's not meeting with a proponent or a developer. And then there's situations that arose with River Neck Road where individual board members were either on the subject property or on abutting properties. And maybe they were invited, maybe they engaged. So there's a variety of ways that individual board members can engage. But it's not board business.
But I would consider that still a site visit, just an individual.
Legally, it's not a site visit. So
Correct.
what's happened in the past, like 84 Turnpike Road, if you recall, board members said, hey, should we do a site visit? Board members said, no, I can just drive by. So like Paul McDougal drove by, I think Tim Shanahan drove by. But the board clearly said, the board isn't doing a site visit.
Yeah, like typically when an agenda comes out on Friday, that weekend, I drive by on the public property and
Right.
see, because there's areas of town that I don't know where this is. I'm not.
I do the same.
Now, if you
The decision
happen
was
to
coming
get
up
out of your
fast.
car and the property owner or the business owner came out and engaged with you, it's still not a board business, but that may be something that other board members want to know about.
So can the board vote to do a site visit on an individual basis, just not together?
Not really a need to vote on that at that point. I think the expectation is that board members, at a minimum, are visiting sites. The only time that the board votes to do a site visit is because
We're all gonna
they,
go together.
as a
When there's going to
group,
be a quorum
Yeah.
of the board.
right, and they feel as though they need to physically get on the site. So for example, 84 Turnpike is a small site, but River Neck's a large site. So you physically can't see the full site unless you have permission from the property owner. So kind of the way to get on the site is to do a site visit, and by default, the private property owner has to grant permission.
Right, but what I'm saying is if logistics prevent the entire group from going at once, could we handle the individual site visit the same way as a group site visit by voting on it and then following the
You're not-
same rules to
Correct me
prevent.
if I'm wrong, but you're not, individual board members are not given legal authority to enter private property. Just because there's an application submitted, I don't believe that.
Well, no, if they work with the proponent, but logistically, they can't all go together.
I don't have a problem with that. The board's always operated like that for smaller sites. I thought there was some heightened sensitivity related to that, just based upon River Neck Road and other things. I don't see the heightened sensitivity. I think if board members, it's difficult to get a board together for a site visit. People are busy, and usually it's on a Saturday or a Sunday. So if people can visit a site on their own, I think that's more than reasonable, and it should be reasonable for everybody.
I think that's true. I mean,
The
since
chal-
I've
the
been on the
challenge
board
will
in
be
2
that
years, we've
occasionally
had
you'll
2
have-
site visits, one UMass, well, no, just one site visit.
We had one at UMass.
We had one at UMass.
Actually, we had a couple, didn't we have a
Oh,
couple?
we went out to the dog place.
Oh, yeah,
at,
I wasn't on you
Turnpike.
for UPS. So 1 in 2 years.
The challenge
So it
will
doesn't come
be
up a lot.
occasionally, the property owner or developer will come out and engage, or abutters will come out and engage.
Right, but my
It's
point
incumbent
is,
upon-
if we follow the same rules
Sure.
as the group site visit, only current information that's already been presented, no engaging.
Sure.
Then
Then that
we
should
shouldn't
be,
have
that should
any-
be fine. The only issue is it's not going to be posted,
Right.
unlike the group one.
And I mean, if you wanted to report back, that would be your option.
Yeah.
And I think that would, if you took a few notes and said, I was there, I discussed it with I ran into the owner, I discussed X, Y, and Z, I received this information, thought the group would benefit from the conveyance of that information. That's perfect.
I'd like to have a little bit more clarification on what was brought up last meeting about meeting with citizens in town. And I think someone said, well, you run into someone at the supermarket, you shouldn't speak to them, because if multiple people run into them, then that could be serial meeting. But I find that, I don't necessarily agree with that concept, because my understanding of public board is us
yeah.
here, conversations with individual citizens. Like, if someone wants to give me their opinion because they saw something was coming up on the board, like, that is their right, that's my right, so long as I do not have a conversation then offline with Mike, and then I don't call up Deirdre, right, like, the public board is
The
us.
problem is when a particular citizen or group of citizens meet with multiple members of the board individually to the point where they've met with a quorum of the board and present the same information to each member. It's no different than if you met individually with a project proponent and received that information.
So long as
individually.
we're not discussing it,
If you're just receiving information,
and you're receiving someone's
not
opinion.
deliberating or responding.
But the fact that you're receiving the information is part of what could be considered to be deliberation.
But the information we're receiving is their opinion. We're not receiving information from a proponent. We're receiving information from a sit-in who's an abutter, which is.
But it shouldn't matter whether it's a proponent or whether it's an opponent. The fact is, if they're submitting information to individual board members outside of the meeting, you're running into the same potential problems under the open meeting law.
What I said, when we were having this conversation,
Is that, like, can we look into that? Because I've gotten various other, I've reached out to various others, and I've gotten a differencing of opinion. So long as we're not discussing it, right? Like, I have every right to talk to somebody. If someone wants to call me up because they've elected me and they have a concern, something's coming up and they want to tell me something, that's their constitutional right to do that. So long as I'm not discussing it with other board members outside of the public meeting, even so they can call up every single person.
That's where the serial deliberation aspect comes into play.
It's kind of
Is
what
it-
happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
okay.
really not that different from what did occur, other than it was multiple members, less than a quorum, that were meeting with the proponent.
But they were discussing it.
When
That was the discussion happening
And an
amongst,
opponent, I went to her house.
right, but going to someone's house and them, like, some citizen inviting us to their house, and us, all of us going, but so long as we don't talk about it outside of the public meeting, and we're not having a discussion, we're going to look at a property because they want to show us how close something is. They have every right to do that.
I think the problematic thing is there's so much gray in there.
Well, then, can I ask you, do you mind taking this back and looking into it and
Sure.
doing a full opinion on it? Because I've gotten some differencing opinion on it.
May I just provide a different perspective? Setting aside the legalities, my input to the board is it does the public hearing a disservice. Because very often, as we know, there are people who aren't comfortable presenting at the podium in front of a large audience. They prefer to engage one-on-one. But what happens in that case is that information is not being heard and shared by everybody and shared to everyone. So it's indirectly, it's doing a disservice to the public hearing. Because the role of the public hearing is for those stakeholders to bring information to the board. And the beauty of having it done at the public hearing is that each board member hears it at the same time and can ask questions and engage in a live interaction. So while it may be legal, it still does this public hearing a disservice. And that's one of the major deficiencies that we experienced with River Neck Road. That there were multiple public hearings going on, and the real public hearing suffered from that. So my advice is, as soon as someone comes to you, you should say, I'll listen, assuming that's legal, but you should always say, please make sure you bring this exact information to the next public hearing. Or ideally say, I don't want to hear it, please bring it to the next public hearing. Because it's so critical that everything that you hear outside the public hearing is brought to the public hearing. Because your fellow board members don't necessarily know what's being discussed if it's not at the public hearing.
And I'd also add that simply reporting what you hear is insufficient.
I'm not saying
Because-
that.
No,
I'm
no,
just-
I know you're not. I was
People
going
call
off
me
a
up.
different
I am going to listen to them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell them I'm not going to listen to them. People run into me at the supermarket,
Yeah,
I'm going to
you
listen
let-
to
you
them.
let 'em
I'm also
talk
going to
and
tell
you
them,
invite 'em
you
to the
know,
hearing.
I'm one person of 7.
Yeah.
If you have, I've repeatedly told people, and I think you guys know that, send an email to the board, come and speak. I've always said that. But I also tell them, I am one person of 7.
Yeah.
I'm not the board, So, I've always
And
encouraged
more
that.
likely than not, it's never going to be an issue. The problem potentially occurs when you've got a coordinated campaign to actually reach out to each board member individually, make a presentation essentially to them, right? And they don't know, because they're not talking, as they shouldn't be, to other board members
I-
outside of the hearing, that they've all heard essentially the same presentation.
Yeah, but again, this is citizens in the town, they can come and, they can make a presentation, they can state their
That's the question.
viewpoint. That's the question I want you to,
Okay, but
Please
just because he
research,
doesn't
'cause-
agree with you doesn't mean that the question hasn't been adequately answered.
I'm just saying, I've gotten various,
Okay, but
Differences
this is
of
our
opinion.
land court attorney
okay.
that we
That's why I'm
employ
asking
to
if
give
you
us
can just go
guidance, and
and-
he's given us guidance.
Just do me a favor, just kind of
Will do.
go through and.
That's a fascinating topic.
Okay. So, are we going to have the policy subcommittee draft a policy about open meetings?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
and
That'll
then,
be the first thing on the list.
yeah, let's have that be the first one.
Yep.
And let's go to the regular agenda.
I couldn't open it.
So first on the,
Deirdre, you all
so
set
this
with me?
is now,
Deidre, can he go?
Yeah. Paul,
I'm
also-
sorry,
also-
Paul, yeah, you,
Yes,
thank you
good
very
night.
much.
Good night, Paul, thanks.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so now we are opening the April 12th Planning Board meeting. We will be present live and on Zoom, and the Zoom aspect is a courtesy to members as well as to the public, and if the Zoom goes down, the meeting live will continue. First on the agenda is public input. If anyone would like to come forth to speak on matters that are not on tonight's agenda, we don't have a time limit yet, but we're going to give you one soon.
Can I ask one question before
Sure.
Paul leaves? Paul, hold on, one question. Because just regarding the public input, you said about stuff that's not on the agenda.
Not on tonight's agenda.
Can someone, and this kind of goes back to the public input we discussed in the beginning, discuss something that's on the agenda but is not an open meeting? Like if we have something, I don't know, like something that's not posted as an open meeting, right, like public comment?
Public hearing.
Thank you, that was the word.
For instance, you've just had a workshop meeting.
Right.
You may have somebody that wants to come up during public comment and provide some feedback, for the workshop meeting that you just held. That should be covered under the public comment. They should be able to
That's
do that.
allowed, so even if it's on the agenda, they can speak? Because we always say, like, if it's on the agenda, you can't say anything.
Well, if it's on the agenda to come, so they're going to have that opportunity to speak on that particular topic
Then
at the
wait.
appropriate time.
Then
right.
wait for that. Otherwise, if it's on the agenda, like if we're doing like,
Like an approval not required.
yeah, like an
That comes in
A&R.
front, it's not public hearing.
Not public, yes, thank you. Can someone speak to that?
Yes.
Thank you, okay.
So I should clarify and say, if you would like to speak about something that will not have a public hearing this evening,
Yes.
then you're welcome to.
Which is what it says.
That's a point I'm a little curious about as well. There may be some details there.
You were this close.
You could maybe
Sorry.
dig that out of the bottom of your law book.
Okay.
I'd be interested to know, particularly in the case where a matter does not have, by bylaw, does not have public input,
Public hearing.
and the degree to which we should encourage or even expect people to comment on those. Because I think the A&R case is an interesting one. We're not looking for information. The A&R submittal has all the information, and we have no public hearing mechanism for getting additional information, so
But that
what
really
would they comment on? And that's,
Well, I don't know what they would comment on.
yeah,
But that would be the only time that you would be able to accept public comment on that.
right. The only way, the only mechanism.
Correct.
And like, even like if someone was like a COA, the COA applicability, right? We typically don't have public comment on that. But someone could come
Another good
in
example, yeah.
and speak during that period.
Yes.
Okay.
That's essentially what the public comment portion of your meeting is for.
Okay, that's what I
Just to
thought.
give that
Invite
opportunity.
comment where there's not clearly a
Which, again, you're not
specific
required to
place.
have that, but if you do, then you can't really limit it, to just subjects that you think are going to be hunky-dory for you. You've got to listen to anything
The
that's.
slander.
So I'm not trying to muddy the waters on that, but and I know we got to get to the agenda, but if you have an item that we're looking at for applicability, that we haven't even been presented yet, we can have the public comment on that, then not hearing the facts yet?
If somebody
Because that
wants to
public
come.
comments at the beginning.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to come out, if there's no portion, there's no mechanism for them to comment
They can do it,
during
yeah.
your agenda item on that subject matter, that would be the time that they could come up and comment. You would not have any back and forth. You would not
Just
say to
take it in,
them, I disagree with the comment that you just made, and this is why. You would save that until you actually were, deliberating on your agenda item.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
All right?
Okay, anyone for public input?
Not seeing it.
Anyone on Zoom? Evan?
No.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Good night.
Seeing
Thank you,
none.
Paul. Quick, run.
Okay, we have a new public hearing for the Lighthouse School, 25 Wellman Ave.
Want to open the hearing, please?
To open the public hearing?
Yep, it should be, you can either read the legal ad right off the agenda, or it's in the bucket.
Okay. The Lighthouse School for the construction of 23,000 square foot addition for classrooms and facilities with associated site improvements. The site is located in the 1A Limited Industrial District and consists of approximately 33.4 acres, as shown on Assessor's Map 9, Block 6, Lot 1. The applicant requests site plan review per section 195-104 of the zoning bylaw and any other zoning relief that is deemed necessary.
Good evening. For the record, Brian Gaudreau with Hancock Associates. We are the civil engineers, land surveyors, and wetland scientists on this project. We have the Lighthouse School Management team here, as well as TBA architects. This evening, I'd like to start with the school, kind of giving you a little background on themselves and the application, followed by I'll walk you through the site, and then we'll close with the architecture of the proposed building. So with that.
Good evening. My name's Scott Bartis. I'm CEO at Lighthouse School. If I can make a public comment, I'm pretty sure I can meet the standard of professional and courteous. So that being said, we'll see how it goes. But seriously, I really wanted to kind of start by really kind of congratulating the newly elected members of the committee, and I think far too few people make the investment that's required to serve on boards like this one, and I think to sometimes make the personal sacrifices for the good of the larger community. And if anything, that really got reinforced in the last 20 minutes, I'm just going to say. So thank you for that. I just want to take the opportunity to give you a very brief introduction to Lighthouse and the current project. We're proud to call Chelmsford home for over 40 years now. So I'd like to just give you just a brief introduction to Lighthouse as a corporation for kids. Lighthouse started with 6 special needs kids in Groton in the late 1970s. We're now one of the largest day schools in Eastern Mass, serving children and families with a wide range of very significant social emotional difficulties. Today, the project we're here to discuss is not new, at least in terms of design. As far back as 2006, we recognized that we had a space issue and that physical expansion was likely needed. But you know how these projects go. You know you need them, and there's always reasons to delay them. So, what happened? COVID. We realized immediately after a shutdown that our building didn't have the adequate space to safely serve our kids and our team. And so given all the uncertainties, we explored many options to lease space, and we're fortunate to find a building at 285 Mill Road. We leased the space and moved in with approximately 25% of our students in the fall of 2021. 2 things became immediately apparent. 1, the space was ideal for our immediate needs. 2, splitting our team and our kids and operating 2 geographical separate sites was far, far less than ideal in terms of our long-term needs. And so it became clear that we needed to revisit our road plan to add space at 25 Wellman Ave. Now, 2 quick points. First, about enrollment and space. There have already been questions about the consequences of adding space and a number of kids enrolled. But let me be clear. There are no plans to add to student enrollment. There are no plans to go beyond pre-COVID numbers. This will not increase the population at 25 Wellman Avenue. Second, why now? The pandemic is over. The reason is that over time, we found that our programming, our services, and the day-to-day experiences of our team and that of our kids was far better with a little more space. Taken together, safety and experience made our choice clear. So in conclusion, the last 3 years have been hard on all of us. It's been really hard on kids. It's been particularly hard on kids who struggle to cope with even the typical demands of school and of life. And so in the end, it was easy. Taking on this project, stressful though it will be, is what's in the best long-term interest of advancing our mission. We are, or hopefully strive to be, a corporation for kids. For special kids, for all kids. For kids enrolled today, and for kids that will be enrolled far into the future. Our building is a reflection of who we are and what we value. We want the kids to experience their school in a way that contributes to their learning and to their treatment. So thank you again for this time. We're excited to work with you and the Chelmsford community to advance the long-term interests and well-being of children and families.
So to dive into the site, 25 Wellman Avenue is a 33-acre parcel. If you look at the plan in front of you, the dark black section is the existing building, and what is in color is the proposed addition. It's built separate, but connected through kind of a common courtyard space area. So the new building is located over what is the current parking lot. Right now, there's 224 spaces across the entire site. With the addition of the building, the space count on the upper tier goes from 224 down to 205, but we're also adding a satellite parking lot kind of out in the field. So that's the little tail, if you will, of pavement, and that's 34 spaces. So the entire site count goes from 224 up to 237. So there's a net increase in parking out there. The existing utilities that service the building, sewer, water, electric, are going to be split off of what's out there right now and service the new building. When we approached this site, we took a look at kind of how operations happen right now. There's kind of a circular flow of traffic in a clockwise fashion. The proposed site mirrors that. We're still going to have kind of that one-way circular traffic. There's a loop road back behind the new building for fire department access, for access down into the fields. And you can't really tell on this plan, and when we get into architecture and the elevations, you'll be able to see it, but it's a one-story building with a lower level, so the school is kind of up high if you've ever visited the site, and the ball fields are a little bit down lower. The back side of this building is actually going to have a row of parking underneath it. So we're accomplishing the parking count by small parking lots next to the common area, parking beneath the building, and then the satellite lot. On site, there's a couple of environmental resources. Back in the fall, we had delineated wetlands and filed an ANRAD with the commission, which was ultimately issued. An ORAD was ultimately issued, and that's to the northern site. And the conservation jurisdiction, we're essentially doing work within what is already developed. So we're not cutting down new areas or altering wetlands. There is floodplain on the site, so the Merrimack River essentially floods this whole area, I think we know. And as a part of doing work within the floodplain, volumetric analysis is a critical component to that. So we looked at all of our cuts and fills, we looked at areas of fill or alteration within the floodplain, and we found suitable areas for compensatory storage. So while we are altering floodplain, we are not introducing any loss of capacity. The compensatory storage is located, generally speaking, in the fields at the southwest corner of the property by the ball field, which is towards the bottom of the page where you see the basketball courts and kind of those two rectangles of plantings. That area is going to be regraded to allow for what we're proposing. Stormwater management is a critical component to this. So right now, the entire site drains through a series of catch basins and pipes to an infiltration basin that's south of the paved area. It's that ellipse, darker brown ellipse shape. So what we're doing in the proposed condition is we're taking half of the parking lot that goes there right now, that is to be occupied by the building and the access road, and we're proposing a porous pavement system. So basically from where you turn around the building, behind the building, and then the satellite lot, that will all be porous pavement. We went out there, we did soil testing to understand groundwater elevations and soil textures, and came up with that as a solution. We did have a departmental meeting a couple of weeks ago. Evan was kind enough to set that up, so we got a lot of feedback from building, DPW, engineering, fire, police. We have a whole litany of comments from them that we're currently addressing, and hopefully anything that comes out of this evening, we'll be able to issue a revised package in very short order. And with that, I'll turn it over to speak about the building.
You have letters.
I'm Justin Humphreys, principal of TBA Architects. I think there's a couple of slides in there that show the actual building elevations and. Perfect, thank you. So we've worked with the Lighthouse School for the better part of 20 years. We're part of their planning efforts for Mill Road, have done quite a bit inside the existing building, and we're part of the 2006 effort to plan a building here as well, which this building sits essentially in that same spot. But I think in that time, we've learned a lot about what the building really needs. And so what we have is a single-story building, as Brian said, with a parking beneath. The building is, the bulk of it is the same height as the existing building, about 13 feet, and then it has 4 larger areas that are for specialized spaces, library multipurpose, and some indoor play area that bump up to 17 feet. So it's an educational use building. We've located classrooms along the east and west walls, taking advantage of light and views, and created these specialized spaces really as moments that mark the corners and views that you would see as you come down the driveway towards the building. The 2 sort of larger rectangles in the image there at the bottom left are what you would see as you come down the entrance drive to the building and help to direct you to the 2 main entrances to the existing and the new building. The new building will be clad, the majority of it in cementitious hardy panel, some different tones and sizes, and then the 4 higher spaces are a mix of glass and an aluminum curtain wall, along with Arriscraft stone in the solid areas there. And I think in this image, you can see the one that's at the top of the screen now is the view from the field, the east side of the building. And so the lighter portion is elevated, the cementitious panel and the school is up there, and then the darker area at the bottom is where the row of parking, the line of parking will be underneath. And then just for your information, this is the plan. As I said, classrooms, the majority of spaces that people occupy consistently through the day at the edge of the building with light and views and air, and then a mixture of spaces in the core of the building where people are for shorter periods of time, as well as services.
So that concludes our presentation. Obviously, we have the whole team here, so if there are any questions about operations or architecture or site, we're happy to answer.
You should have some letters.
Yep,
in the
got them
file.
right here. Why don't I do the letters? First letter, fire prevention. Dear members of the board, the Fire Prevention Office has reviewed the proposal to construct a new building at 25 Wellman Ave in North Chelmsford and finds the following. The water supply, including the required pressure and flow, shall be confirmed by a current water flow test performed proximate to the site, with all calculations submitted to this department for review and approval. The developer shall add a hydrant within 60 feet of any proposed fire department sprinkler connection. The Chelmsford Fire Department requires a hydrant within 60 feet of the fire department connection and a hydrant within 500 feet or all points of the exterior of the building for manual firefighting operations. Hydrants and fire protection equipment shall be free from landscaping or vehicle obstructions, with a clearance of 72 inches to any hydrant outlet and 48 inches to the rear of the hydrant per CFD site plan review guidelines. Regarding apparatus access, the developer shall submit an apparatus access plan which uses either a template specific to Chelmsford Fire Department Ladder 1 or the AASHTO Bus 45 template. This department is concerned with an apparent pinch point at the southeastern corner of the proposed building. At this point, the called-out dimension of the driveway is reduced to 18 feet at a point adjacent to the proposed bus lane. This driveway would appear to be further reduced if there were to be any car parked in the last spot on the stall farthest south. The Fire Prevention Office requests that portion of the driveway be expanded to a minimum of 20 feet wide continuous fire lane. The developer shall install signage that indicates a fire lane on the side of the access road adjacent to the proposed building. Snow storage shall not obstruct or impede fire access roads or turnaround. All exits shall have sidewalks to allow a continuous path from the exit that leads to a public way. The dumpster location shown on this plan is adequate. An automatic sprinkler system conforming to NFPA 13 and a fire alarm system conforming to NFPA 72 shall be required. All systems shall be monitored by a UL-approved central station monitoring service, and all components and fire protection systems must comply with Massachusetts State Building Code and Chelmsford Fire Department requirements. All equipment related to fire safety shall be located at the discretion of the Chelmsford Fire Department. The applicant is advised that testing for emergency radio responder communication and, if necessary, installation of a bidirectional amplifier system shall be required according to Chelmsford Fire Department ERRC regulations. A separate Knox box for the new building shall be installed at a location acceptable to this office. The applicant may apply to the Town of Chelmsford E911 Committee for address and unit numbering through its coordinator, Town Clerk Tricia Zuras. This office would approve of this plan with these conditions, and I ask the board to make this letter a part of their approval process. Respectively submitted, Danielle Katsufis. The next one is from the building commissioner to Jeep Tarney, excuse me. Please be advised that the above regarded project needs to comply with the table of dimensions requirements of the Town of Chelmsford for minimum lot and yard requirements and with the current building code, energy code, accessibility code. This department is requiring an official certified plot plan with existing setbacks to the abutters from the proposed structure. Thank you, respectively, Jose Negron. From DPW Director, no comments. Let's see, do we have, looks like we have two of those. Oh, from Police? No, I'm sorry, that last one was North Chelmsford Water. Police, no comments. And Board of Health, no comments.
So wait, was DPW?
Still waiting on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tony Rapucci is on the Zoom call, but I don't believe they've submitted a letter yet.
Okay.
We submitted it on April 7th. I sent that in to Becky. It was about 3 pages.
Okay.
The comments were given to Brian before, and just waiting to hear feedback on it. There's nothing new that we hadn't already previously discussed.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, so I guess then we're opening up to questions. Does anyone have any questions for the proponent? Should we start with you, Chris?
Sure, I've got a few, actually. And part of this might be more related to our zoning bylaws. So the project was titled Addition to the School, but it doesn't seem like this is attached in any way.
It is not.
Okay, is it still considered an addition?
It's an addition to the site. It's a second principal structure.
Okay, all right. And some of this may be addressed in the DPW, so if Tony might be able to answer some of these questions as well. But the sewer and water is expanding to the new building. Is there additional capacity, sewer capacity needed for that? And how are you getting that capacity?
Yep. So as a part of our department meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago, the topic of sewer was brought up. And I think one thing that Lighthouse mentioned already, there's no net increase of students or faculty as a part of this project. So everyone was split between Mill Road and Wellman Ave in 2021, and now we're bringing them back together. So water records were pulled from both Mill Road and Wellman Ave and compared pre-2021, 2020 to current, and it's basically stating that combined the flows remain consistent. So there is no increase in flow.
So then this might be a question for Tony or you, Evan. If that capacity is moving from Mill Road to here, does that mean that any new development or redevelopment in Mill Road would have to come up with some sewer capacity?
So just it's actually, the flow came from Wellman to Mill, and now it's going back to Wellman. So there is no net increase in flow at all.
So there would be some prior to that
Exact
flow from
historical
Mill
data.
Road that would be referenced now?
Tony can answer.
Yes, so I can add some clarity to this. So in the letter that was sent, the applicant has a unique situation where a percentage of the faculty was moved from 25 Wellman to another site during the pandemic. We did look at the 10-year usage, and there was a drop in usage of about 30% from the usage that was in the 2020, pre-2020, or in between 2020 and 2022 now. So we did do that 10-year average with their allowable 500-gallon increase. And so we're going to ask for a condition that we monitor the sewer flow of 1,649 gallons per day going forward to monitor. And then if they go beyond that increase, that then we would use the sewer regulation of the $300 a day fine for them to go back under that flow, or for them to find a solution, whether it's through an I&I program or something, if they do exceed that. But there was a noticeable drop in their usage for the last 2 years, and that they have stated that they're not going to increase the amount, and so that the assumption is that they're going to be going back to that 2020 usage. And so we still use the 10-year average plus 500, and that's the number that DPW is going to use to monitor going forward for the next 6 months, year, 2 years, and so on.
If I might, just to get a little clarity here, and put it in practical terms, you're going to leave the property over on Mill Road. Now somebody wants to move in there, what's going to happen? Somebody wants to buy it, or you're going to find another use for it. Where is that sewage capacity coming from?
So that sewage capacity was already reduced when they occupied Mill. So if you look at Wellman
Okay.
and Mill, say you had 1,000 gallons per day at Wellman, the 1,000 gallons was split when they moved to Mill Road. So the 1,000 goes down to 750, 250.
Oh, okay, so
And
you're
now it's going
basically
back
saying
up
the
to
original
1,000.
1,000 was,
Exactly.
Okay.
The net flow hasn't changed. It just
Okay.
changed locations, and now it's coming back.
okay.
But still, the Mill Road then, I mean, it's not really a factor for this project, but just for my own understanding, if someone wants to develop the Mill Road project, that would have a pre-existing sewer usage
Yeah.
prior to Lighthouse being the occupant that would be referenced to determine their usage in the future,
Be
correct?
part of the 10-year calculation that Tony's
Okay.
referring
Okay.
to.
Got it.
Just as an FYI, I believe DPW was interested in coming to your next meeting, and I believe the board has expressed
Yeah.
interest in having DPW come in.
Perfect.
Okay. And then some of these other questions may be addressed in that DPW letter as well, but I noticed that there was a pond that's mentioned in the stormwater management. Is that truly a pond, or is that a catch
Detention
basin,
pond.
or?
If we're referencing the stormwater infiltration basin, that's located to the south of the building, right where the
Yeah,
pink
okay,
cursor
because
is.
it's mentioned as a pond in the stormwater report, and I just,
So it's a retention pond?
There is a pond on the,
Correct.
Yeah, there is a
there's a
pond out
pond on
back.
the site, though.
And so if you look off-page, it's not as a part of our plan set. To the north of the fields, there's an access drive, and it's separated by a small stand of trees. It's north beyond even this page. Yeah, exactly. So if you go further off the page to the northeast, there's a pond and a wet meadow.
that was the next question I was going to have. But the pond that you're talking about in the stormwater reports. to
Stormwater
the
report
south,
would be the-
And
yeah.
it's essentially a catch basin, it's not really a true pond.
Correct. It's
Okay.
man-made.
Okay. And you said that the Conservation Commission isn't reviewing this?
They are. So we filed an ANRAD for the wetland line only in the fall, and since we filed with this board, we have filed also with a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission.
Okay, so they
So
will
we
be
haven't
reviewing.
opened that public hearing yet, but we're going to in the next week or so.
Okay. Okay, thanks. And I guess that's it for me.
Paul?
You know how the fire department was worried about the pinch off? Is there a reason why you couldn't expand that, or are you gonna be
Nope,
able to?
as a part of our revision, we're addressing that.
Why would you not be looking to add more students? Or like, why wouldn't you build so you could add more students?
It's up to you. Well, I guess.
Up to the podium, please.
I don't mean to be flip. I think just as an example, you have a family, they have a two-bedroom cape. They say, man, we're cramped. So they put a dormer on, they put an extension, they put a new covered family room. Then they want to have 3 more kids. They're right back in the same space. So we don't want to be back in this. We don't want to be back in the space issue. And I think, like I say, we knew in 2006 that we needed more space. Again, without a plan for an expansion of enrollment. I think, it sounds good on one hand, but I think in terms of what we can serve to adequately, then I think there's no interest in expanding in enrollment for the foreseeable future. And I think, again, it would be counter to the logic of this project if we were to try to add kids. I think we found that it's much better for them from a learning perspective. It's much better for them from a therapeutic perspective, given that we can spread them out a little bit. And just from a contagious illness perspective, I think we've all learned the hard way about thinking very carefully about the particulars of facilities. So for all kinds of reasons, we really don't, it would not be in our best interest to try to expand.
Thank you. Anything else, Anita?
Nope.
Brian, just one quick question. Where's the floodplain line? I don't see it on the drawings. Like, you can just call it out. You can go up to the, is it going right through the building? Yeah. Oh, it's right on the edge.
Yeah, so it's about midway down the slope. So if you stand on the parking lot, and look out over the fields are within floodplain. And then as you go up the slope, you're no longer within floodplain. So the proposed building itself is above the floodplain elevation. The garage down below it is open, so that we don't have flood impacts.
So will that flood, that parking below?
Yes, it is designed to.
It's designed to flood.
So is it going to be like moat pumping it out, or you just?
No, all gravity. So we set the building elevation very specifically, and we're pitching the concrete slab in the garage to be able to gravity drain.
Just to follow up on Mike's question, to clarify for the board, because this is not a COID project, under the zoning bylaw, floodplain is administered by the ZBA under zoning. Obviously, the Conservation Commission will be doing the review of floodplain as well.
Right.
So the way this will play out is that DPW is going to do the stormwater review, the Planning Board and Conservation. Conservation may peer review the floodplain, and then the zoning board's going to rely on the Conservation Commission review and technical peer review.
Yeah, I just wanted to know when he said the whole area floods, I wanted
Sure.
to see it. So I was searching through the drawings. I just couldn't see the line. So thank you.
Is that it?
Yes.
Nothing particular here, it's all been covered.
Just wanted to ask a question about the parking being proposed under the new building. Am I correct in assuming that with the vehicles under there, that there'll be some type of a safeguard? God forbid someone leaves a motor running, the carbon monoxide not into the building. Would there be like a warning system, or is that not a concern because you'd have a concrete floor?
So it's also open air. So the entire wall of the lower level is open to the fields. So we don't have a concern about that.
Tim?
But But fire is requiring sprinklers, correct?
Sorry. So the whole building is sprinklered, including the parking garage is sprinklered to have a dry system there. And there is, although not required, we're designing a 1-hour rating between the parking and the building that's right above it.
Tim Shanahan?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think it's great that they're going to be combining. I'm looking forward to seeing the project.
Thank you.
The only thing I have, it's kind of a minor thing, but I guess I don't quite understand from the photos. The parking lot, which just seems to be the focus of all our questions, it's at grade, it's at, and then the building itself is elevated 1 story, correct?
Yeah, kind of. If you could go back to the site plan, I'll try to walk you through grading a little bit. So sheet 5 would be the GDU sheet. 4, 5. All right, so this is the existing building here, and this is the existing parking lot. And then after the parking lot, it falls down probably about 12 feet to the fields. The 2 buildings are going to be at the same elevation, so the small parking lots on either side next to the common area are all at the upper level. As you loop around the building, you're now getting to the field elevation, which is 12 feet down. That's where the parking garage level is. And then we have the satellite parking lot here that's also at the field elevation. And then you go back up to get to the building.
Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question on that then? So it sounds like there'll be, both sides of the driveway will be sloped. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Does that area currently flood, like in the spring?
It's in floodplain. I mean, the school could talk about.
No, but that's 100 years, but the
Is 100 years.
flooding is a changing thing, I think.
In our 25 years there, it's flooded twice.
Okay.
I could tell you great stories, but I'm not going to bore you guys tonight. But it flooded twice, came exactly up to where Brian's talking about, and then drained away.
Over what time frame did it drain?
The second time it took, I want to say, almost 2 weeks. It was pretty bad. It was, I mean, we had fish there. The carp were there. It was amazing. It was really amazing to us. But yeah, it did. And it's happened twice to us. It happened twice.
So you're going to run shuttle buses or something during, if that happens again?
It'll be trouble.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, should we open the public hearing?
I don't see anyone on Zoom. Anyone in the room?
What's that?
Anyone in the room want to speak?
Anyone want to speak for the public hearing on this project?
Yeah, we should probably continue, however, because we have more information coming.
Yeah. So I will take a motion to continue.
Move to continue the public hearing to
April 26th.
April 26th.
Second? Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
God
So
bless.
so let's, you might figure out what they're going to come back with, what we can expect at the next
We're going to be looking for the DPW letter
DPW.
Conservation Commission.
and the Concom.
When do you meet with
I don't have the exact date.
25th.
The 25th, we will be meeting with Conservation. I've already had a little bit of back and forth with David Kuntz about the compensatory storage and floodplain analysis being peer-reviewed, and he's getting quotes right now. So hopeful that we can address all of that before the 25th, in advance of the 26th.
And then does it have to also go to the ZBA after that? Before
Yeah.
us?
No, so if this board is comfortable with your letters and your process, you may be in a position to close and vote on the 26th.
Okay.
Your decision can be conditioned on, obviously, Concom and ZBA approval. I'm not suggesting you need to keep your hearing open, but you certainly have that option.
Okay. Well, maybe we can see how close it seems
Okay.
on the 26th. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Have a good night, thank you.
We were courteously respectful.
You're even exiting respectfully.
I hope so.
All right, next up, we have a new public hearing on 18 to 20 Chelmsford Street. That's the Boar's Head
I do have
LLC.
letters when we get to it.
And this is for the demolition of one existing building and for the construction of a new building constructed in its place, which will be used for 2 residential units and an office. The site is located in the CV Center Village District, consisting of approximately .48 acres, as shown on Assessor's Map 73, Block 322, Lot 6. The applicant requests approval under Article 18A Center Village Zoning, Section 195-98.1 for an accessory residential use, and Section 195-98.3 for a 20% reduction in parking.
Hi, I am Catherine Farrell, and I'm with the law firm of Farrell and Robbins, and I'm covering for attorney Melissa Robbins tonight, who could not be here. I'm here with my clients, Michael and Joanne Sargent of Boar's Head LLC, and we also have with us Brian Melissy of Haley Ward, the project engineer. And I'd like to give you a brief overview of the project. The property is located at 18 to 20 Chelmsford Street. It's located in the CV Center Village zoning district, and it contains .48 acres. The first slide is up there, and that sort of shows you the overview of the property. Currently, there's 2 structures there. The main building is number 20. That's going to remain undisturbed throughout the project. This building houses the sergeant's current business. They underwent construction in 2008 to bring it up to its current restored condition. The accessory building, known as number 18, is shown as the red building on the slide. Can you show the second slide?
You got it right here. This second slide?
The second.
This is it.
Oh, that's it, okay. It's the red building in the back, and it's currently unoccupied and in disrepair. The project that we propose is to demolish the accessory building and rebuild it with a mixed-use building. That's the third slide, perfect. We've already received approvals from both the Chelmsford Historic District Commission and the Chelmsford Historical Commission for demolition and reconstruction of the accessory building. We wanted to make sure we went there beforehand, made sure we took care of every single thing that they wanted, and the new accessory building is in harmony with the existing building at 20. They both have approved, both boards, the historic boards have approved the designs shown on the next slide. So this is the new structure that we're proposing for the accessory building. It will contain an office and 2 separate apartments. Joanne and Michael Sargent, who are here, they intend to live in the apartment on the 2nd floor, and they intend to move their elderly mother into the apartment on the 1st floor. And then there's going to be a small office on the right-hand side, and there's a garage in the middle. Fun fact, the property was originally built by Dr. Paul Kitteridge in approximately 1831. He was the son of a doctor, and he had 14 children, and 4 of whom ended up being doctors themselves. So we're here tonight for site plan review and for an application for special permit for reduction in parking. Section 195-98.1 of the zoning bylaw allows residential use as an accessory use in the CV Center Village District. That was meant to reinforce the downtown village character. The current project is exactly what that section was meant to protect. The bylaw, namely, where Joanne, Michael, and their elderly mother can work where can live exactly where they work in the CV district. The offices in both the main building and the proposed accessory building are permitted principal uses in the CV district. And the 2 apartments would be an allowed use as an accessory use in conformance with section 195-98.1 of the bylaws. We're also here asking for a special permit to reduce the parking. A special permit may be granted under section 195-98.3 of the bylaws for a total reduction of parking not to exceed 50%. In this case, we're actually asking for a reduction of only 20%. 22 spaces are required, but we're asking that it be limited to 18. And you can see from the site plan what that might look like. I'm now going to turn this over to the project engineer, Brian Melissi, and he'll give you an engineering overview.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Congratulations, by the way. Members of the board, for the record, Brian Melissi with Haley Ward, with a civil engineer on the project. So as Kathy said, this is located at 18 to 20 Chelmsford Street. The property, if we look at that rendered up plan that's on the screen now, Chelmsford Street is to the bottom of the page, or plan south. It is abutted or surrounded on either side, east and west, by developed buildings. One is the dentist office by Markham, and another, the restaurant bank of buildings to the left. To the rear, or the upper part of that page, it is abutting the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Kind of the unique thing about this property is, if anybody's had a chance to drive by and actually look into the property, now that this project is finally in front of you guys, it actually sits below most of the grades around it. It's surrounded on the 3 sides, 2 sides in the rear by retaining walls, and it actually sits a little bit lower in grade than Chelmsford Street. The existing facility, most of the area is already paved. There is an existing stormwater management network on site consisting of some deep sump catch basins with hoods connected to subsurface recharge trenches, which collects the stormwater runoff from the impervious areas of the site and recharges it back into the soil. We did not design that system, but we kind of know it works, because every time I've been out there, the site's been fairly dry. Actually, it's been very dry. So as Kathy alluded to, the project consists of the demolition of the existing building, number 18, that red building, and the construction of the new building. We have actually a reduction in impervious area by roughly 600 square feet, adding a couple of landscaped areas in and around the building. You can see by some of the shaded area, the colored one shows it up a little bit better. You don't have to go to that quite yet, Evan, but so we do have some areas in and around the building that we're adding some landscaping to. Very similar to the project that was just in front of you. Evan was kind enough to schedule a department head meeting. We had that last week, where we met with the department heads and we got some comments. You probably have those in the letters, but to run down very quickly, fire department is looking for a sprinkler system to the new building. We are waiting for some input from the fire protection engineer and the architect on whether a new service to that building, a new water service, would be required. There is a 2-inch service now. If the fire sprinkler system cannot be maintained on that 2-inch service, we would have to bring another one in. We talked to DPW and engineering. Currently, the way these 2 buildings were plumbed into the sewer system when they were originally put onto the sewer system is there's a single connection coming out of the barn in the back, going to the east or the right of the plan, and then out to the right of the new building, and a single connection into the sewer system. DPW asked us that we split that, and we would certainly accommodate that. I should bring up, and if you want to maybe zoom into that, or maybe I can come over here to the screen, I apologize, but the infamous spot number 9, which is right here, was a bit of a bone of contention at that department head meeting. We tried to obviously put as much parking as we could on the site, trying to meet the parking regulations. However, we are been asked to eliminate that spot number 9. So when Kathy alluded to the fact that we are asking for a reduction from 22 to 18 spaces, it's a good thing we filed it the way we did, because we are now asking for a reduction from 22 to 17 spaces, which puts us just over that 20% that we could do by right, but certainly less than that 50% that we could ask by special permit. So while we still need a special permit, we are going to eliminate one additional spot. Some of the other comments that came about was trying to put a little bit more landscaping on this site. As I said, most of the site is paved now. However, what we're going to try to do is put some shade trees along the westerly boundary at the edge of the, at the edge of the pavement, and try to put some additional greenscape into that. So I touched on stormwater. I should say, due to the construction of the new building, that stormwater system, that existing stormwater management network will not be touched. It'll remain intact. One of the original comments that we received from engineering was they asked us to put some roof drains directly from the new building directly into the catch basins. We have accommodated that on this site plan. They show that. And I should point out that when that request was made, the sergeants had their architect put the roof drains onto the architectural plans, onto the renderings, went back to the Historical Commission to show them that in order to make sure that they were okay with that. And they were. They gave us a letter saying they were good with that. I know I was probably very quick, and as typical, I probably forgot something I should have told you, but I'm sure you'll ask me. So I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, I've got a small packet of letters. One of them's pretty substantial. Okay, Chelmsford Water District. The Chelmsford Water District has concerns with the proposed construction of a dwelling at this site. A representative for the project should contact the Chelmsford Water District. Once the contractor has met with us, reviewed and accepted our requirements, we will forward a signed approval letter to you. In addition, the Board of Water Commissioners, upon approval of the proposed project, would request the following 4 bullets be part of your order of conditions. 1, the project shall be built to the current rules and regulations found on the district website. 2, water is for domestic use only. 3, water-saving devices shall be utilized throughout the facility. 4, xeriscape landscaping should be implemented to minimize water usage. Sincerely, Brandon Kanata, Distribution Manager, Chelmsford Water. All right, the second is Department of Public Works from Sheila Joyce, Project Engineer. Read site plan review application 18 to 20 Chelmsford Street on behalf of Borshead LLC for demolition of one existing building and the construction of a new building constructed in its place that will be used for 2 residential units and office. The engineering department has performed a review of the application for site plan review and special permit for 1820 Chelmsford Street submitted by Borshead LLC. The following contents of the submission were reviewed for appropriateness of method and accuracy, as well as for compliance with Town of Chelmsford Stormwater Bylaw, Town of Chelmsford Stormwater Management Regulations, Division 3 Sewer Capacity and Connection Restrictions. Engineering plan report entitled Application for Site Plan Review and Special Permit for 1820 Chelmsford Street. Okay, site review, outstanding DPW engineering issues not addressed. Provisions for an enclosed dumpster pad and dumpster should be depicted upon the plan set. The long-term and perpetual care of the dumpster, including the emptying, the enclosure, will be the responsibility of the property owner. Clarification requests for snow storage location to be depicted upon the plan set. During construction, care should be taken to maintain separation of at least 10 feet horizontally from the edge of sewer services to the edge of water services. Where a horizontal separation of 10 feet is not practical, both services can be installed closer to each other, but the water service should be 18 inches higher than the sewer service per DEP standards. All existing and/or proposed utilities shall be clearly and accurately labeled, size, material, existing proposed, rim, invert, etc., on the drawing, reflecting the most updated utility connections and sizing. Sewer comments. No increase to the town of Chelmsford sewer infrastructure shall be more than 500 GPD. Clarification request for sewer flow rate for proposed building. The applicant shall analyze sewage flow using Title V and proposed conditions to determine required sewer allocation. This should be submitted to DPW for approval for existing sewer connections. If there is a change in use or expansion, the applicant shall submit necessary floor plans and seating plans to supplement the sewer allocation calculations. Recommended stormwater management conditions. Ownership as well as O&M of all stormwater systems and BMPs shall be clearly stated on the plan to avoid confusion in the future regarding responsibility of the stormwater management facility. The deeds or a covenant shall clearly specify the homeowners or association or property owner who shall be responsible for owning the system, as well as inspecting and maintenance schedules. The project's stormwater management system shall comply with the DEP stormwater management policy. Applicant needs to conform and submit stormwater standards checklist with stormwater calculations. Recommended general conditions of approval. All materials within the public right-of-way will comply with town standards as set forth in the Town of Chelmsford Department of Public Works street opening utility connection rules and regulations. As-built plans shall be submitted to the engineering department on Mylar, PDF, and AutoCAD, no larger than 24 by 36, a D-size print, upon completion of the project. The DPW shall monitor and enforce sewer flow limitations and impose penalties for violations thereof in accordance with the town's sewer policy. All stormwater best management practices will be inspected by design engineers and certified that they are built in compliance with plans. Documentation needed including photos, field book entries, and engineers' daily reports to be submitted to DPW with final as-built. Any proposed sedimentation control device within the town's right-of-way must be maintained, inspected, cleaned, and replaced as necessary to prevent possible flooding issues during rain events. Once all site work is done and approval is granted by the DPW, any sedimentation control devices must be removed by the applicant as soon as possible. Erosion controls will be installed at the direction of the engineering department if determined necessary at the time of construction. The erosion controls may include but are not limited to silt fence, straw wattles, straw bales, temporary sediment traps, temporary diversion swales, temporary basins, silt sacks, etc. The engineering department may also require the applicant to provide supplemental information on the placement and sizing of any additional temporary erosion controls. Site utility contractor must schedule a pre-construction meeting with DPW engineering prior to start of work. Inspectors must be given proper notice, 48 hours, before any tasks that must be witnessed by town personnel are performed. Town personnel must be present to inspect the bottom of infill systems prior to installation. Discussion of testing requirements with the contractor when permits are issued is required. All handicap parking signs must meet the requirements of MGL Part 1, Title 7, Chapter 40, Section 22A, and clearly and legibly display the following message. Handicapped parking, special plate required, unauthorized vehicles may be removed at owner's expense. Applicant site contractor must schedule a pre-construction meeting with DPW Engineering Division prior to start of work. A sewer permit shall be filed with DPW prior to start of any work. A trench permit shall be filed as necessary per 520 CMR 14.00, Chapter 82A. Okay, the next letter is Chelmsford Fire Department. Dear members of the board, the Fire Prevention Office has reviewed the proposal and to construct a new building at 18 Chelmsford Street and finds the following. The water supply, including the required pressure and flow, shall be confirmed by current water flow tests performed proximate to the site, with all calculations submitted to this department for review and approval. Apparatus access is acceptable. The plan allows fire apparatus to access the parking lot for 1820 Chelmsford Street. In addition, the building is proposed to be less than 100 feet from the roadway. This project represents a mixed-use occupancy. an automatic sprinkler system conforming to NFPA 13 and a fire alarm control system conforming to NFPA 72 shall be required. All systems shall be monitored by a UL-approved central station monitoring service, and all components and fire protection systems must comply with Massachusetts State Building Code and Chelmsford Fire Department requirements. A Knox box shall be required to be installed near the office doorway. The applicant shall install wayfinder signage that adequately identifies residential versus office entrances. The applicant must apply to the Town of Chelmsford E911 Committee for address and unit numbering through its coordinator, Town Clerk Trish Juris. This office will approve of this plan with these conditions, and I ask the board to make this letter a part of their approval process. Respectfully submitted, Danielle Katsoukas. From Board of Health, no comments. From the police, no comments. And that's it.
Do you have any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? Should we start again with Chris?
Sure, if you want. So, looking at the plans, is this site consisting of one parcel or multiple lots?
It's one parcel.
It is one, okay. So the percentage of residential versus commercial incorporates both buildings then, right?
Right, both buildings contain an office, which is allowed, and then the accessory structure will have 2 residential units.
Okay. But the calculation of what's residential versus commercial is encompassing both buildings?
Excuse me.
Because when I'm looking at the new building that you're proposing.
Yep.
I'm seeing 3/4 of it as residential and 1/4 commercial. To me, that's primarily residential and not commercial.
I can answer this. The primary structure, number 20, is 5,000 square feet of livable space. And the accessory structure, as proposed, is 2,434 square feet. And that will have 2 residential structures and an office in it. So if you're looking for ratios, the total square footage proposed is somewhere around 7,500 square feet. And then the 2 residential structures are, I don't know the exact square footages of them, but I think it's definitely accessory use and not primary. The office is the primary piece, more than 50%, definitely.
So the office in that one building is more than 50% of that building?
In the accessory structure? No, not in the accessory structure. In the primary structure, it's all office, that 5,000 square foot primary structure.
Okay.
In the accessory structure, the top floor is residential, and then downstairs, there's a small apartment and a small office.
Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out,
Okay.
is if the totals are based on both buildings and not just the accessory building.
Okay.
But that's, Evan, I'm assuming that's because they're all on one
Correct.
property now.
Right.
Okay. So, one question I have for you, Evan, the process for subdividing is clear. What's the process for combining lots for purposes of this type of calculation? Because I would assume that if you have, say, for example, say, for instance, I'm going to take Riverneck. If that's subdivided into 5 buildings and there's 5 different buildings or 5 different buildings on each property, it would be considered separate entities. It wouldn't be, but if it's one property, it would be the sum total of all of them.
So so as you're seeing, every situation is different and unique. And so this situation is the first application for accessory residential that I've seen in 15 years in the Center Village District. I think what you're asking is, how is accessory use defined? Is it based upon square footage, or is it based upon something else? It's not really fully defined. So your methodology is an appropriate one, but in some cases, it may not be crystal clear just based upon total square footage.
How are we figuring out the parking then? How do we do it, on
Par-
residential? or-
Parking is based upon each individual, square footage of each individual use. So they have 5,000 square feet of office in 20 Chelmsford Street.
Okay.
And then they have two residential units in 18 and a small office.
And that's how the parking was calculated.
And that's how it's required, each itemized use.
So there must be a number that you used for the office part of the,
Yep, I'm just looking it up. The office on
3,000
the,
square feet and 700.
so the livable square feet in the new office area is 708.
But nothing on the single family, but it doesn't matter there.
So just to go back.
so
we
then
do-
the residential would be like 16-something.
We define accessory use, and I'll just read it. A use customarily incidental to that of the main or principal building or use of the land. So because the Center Village District allows for residential as an accessory use, while the mathematical methodology can be used to verify, it doesn't necessarily need to mathematically necessarily be less than. Because in some cases, you could have something that's customarily incidental if the zoning is encouraging it. So there's a variety of ways to, figure out appropriateness.
But I guess my question is it based on that one building or both?
It's based upon both, because it's one site. And in the Center Village District, it allows for mixed use within a building or mixed use on a property within separate buildings.
But mixed use within a building on one site is based on the accessory versus primary. And I guess it's not really clear how we define accessory versus primary right now in our bylaws.
It's not crystal clear, correct. So that's why I'm saying I think the mathematical methodology is a good way to try to verify that in the basic sense of accessory and principal.
So if we were using that methodology, and if these two were on different properties, you couldn't combine them to get that?
If they were on separate properties right now, they wouldn't be able to come in as an accessory use unless they propose simultaneously to combine them, to combine the two lots into one lot.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to figure out, because on this diagram, it looks like it shows multiple lots.
Yeah, it's definitely one lot.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the other question I had is parking space number 9. Why, who was asking for that to be removed and why?
Evan, you may be able to help me out here. It was definitely at the department head meeting.
It was,
I'm not sure
I
if-
brought it up as well. I think it's this space here, not the one that's labeled 9, but the one next to it, right? Was
Okay,
it one
I
or two?
took that discussion, because this.
Oh, no, it's this one, yeah.
We
on
weren't
this-
counting this area, although it's paved, we were not counting as a space, because it's not accessible.
It was
for a
this
car.
one, labeled 9.
It was this one here. If you look at the architecturals, there's actually a 4-car garage at the middle of here. If someone could pull in here and certainly pull out, it just came up at that hearing. That do we need all that parking? Could you lose number 9 for just a little bit of, I guess, some better traffic flow? And we certainly said, yes, we could use that. We were trying to put as much parking on as possible with the reductions in the 20% versus the 50%. And I brought that up because that's what was brought up to us.
Okay, because I was assuming it would have been the fire department who would have mentioned it, and then I was wondering why they didn't ask for that other space that would have been blocking. That's the only reason why I assumed it was the fire department wanting access around, but
I
if
certainly don't want
it's,
to put any words into Danielle's mouth, but it was talked about access around, and because this building is less than 100 feet from the roadway, and I've never had to fight a fire, thank God, but the truck could get in here and access the building and do what he needed to do. So the only thing that came to us out of that meeting was to eliminate spot number 9.
And then on the plans, it looks like the right door is the office entry, is that correct? Even though it looks, from the architectural plans, it looks like it's the same on both sides, but I'm assuming it's the office entry.
Yeah, so the office is the rotundo,
Yeah.
this oval piece on the right-hand side. So they would be able to access it through here. I think there was a floor plan, no? I think if we go under here.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah. And then the apartments are,
Yeah, I got it right there, yeah.
both apartments are accessible on the other side, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then the last question, where would you put the snow storage?
If you go back to the site plan, again, most of the area is driven. There's retaining walls around the whole thing. Where I show the green space, we do have a little bit of area for snow storage here, some here, and a little bit over here. It's, again, I explained at that meeting, we get a winter like we did in 2015, we're certainly gonna have to do some snow removal in order to kind of keep those parking spots clear.
Okay. That's it.
Paul?
I don't think I have any questions.
Anita?
I just have a couple questions, more clarifying. The green that is around the buildings, is that additional greenery you're adding?
Yes.
Because that's not there right now, like in
It's
the
not
back,
there right now.
even for the old building, is that green
The
there?
existing building, that green is there.
Is there?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you looked at the aerial from Google Earth, it actually shows up pretty well. The existing building is pretty much all paved around it. So this is where we actually get that reduction in impervious area that I spoke about, about 600 square feet. But yeah, that is new landscape area.
That's all.
Brian, is that office open to the public? On the first floor to the right, is that a public office or is that a private office?
They have
Yes.
one handicap.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I think it's a great-looking building. I think it's awesome.
It's a little
I
tall.
don't think the center village zoning,
But
this is
that's
what
it.
it's meant for. However, I understand what you're trying to do. What I'm debating internally, under the CD district, even two families are not allowed. It's not allowed. And we're putting a two-family home right in that district with a small office. And I understand it's great for the neighborhood, and I think it's a beautiful-looking building. But that's where I'm struggling right now, is how do we, you're gonna set a precedent, how do we put two structures on one lot and just approve it? And we're not even talking dimensions, and we're not talking setbacks, and that's where I'm confused right now, and that's what's going through my head, because half of me says, hey, I love this, and I think it looks great. I'm sorry, do you have an answer on the public? Is an
Yes,
office?
it would be open to the public, and from what I understand is the residential use is an accessory use allowed in the district.
No, I understand that, but
Oh,
this is
okay.
this is a two-family home going in the district, and in the district alone, you cannot build this separately. So under the center village zoning, you can under B, but it also wants you to match A. You don't meet qualities of A. A is a retail store, a retail floor area to strengthen the small business. This isn't retail. And then B is, because you share the parking, and then section B is residence uses are allowed as an accessory. So that's where I'm struggling with, and I'm just trying to figure out how to get this through for you and try to get through this. It's a nice-looking building, I spend a lot of money in the architecture, which matches the center district downtown, which we want, and we want residential down there. But this is that's all commercial right there. And we're putting technically two single families right in the middle of it. And I'm not sure that that was the intent. That's what I'm struggling with. Maybe the board members can help me against that struggle. I don't think the zoning, Center Village zoning, which you're asking for a special permit for, was the intent to have this built right in the center of town.
I think
We can
someone
have,
was
we can have
living in there.
multifamily
They
and.
were living in there, weren't
You
they?
cannot.
Wasn't it an
CD
artist
district, you
living
cannot
in
have
there?
multifamily. Separate, as a separate building. It's right here on page, on 195, the attachment 1.1 on the chart. Unless I'm reading this wrong, under district CD, single family, not allowed, two-family, not allowed, multifamily, not allowed.
CV.
Under CD, this is CD.
No, CV.
CV.
This is CD on the zoning map. So maybe that's, okay, so it says CD here. On the maps, on the town maps. So it's not CD?
Center Village,
Is Center Village an overlay?
No.
No, it's not an overlay.
So, okay, so I could be 100% wrong there, but on the town information which we're going off of, it says Zone CD.
You at the GIS map?
Yep.
Okay. I have a comment. Do you
Yeah.
want to hear it? I guess they had 2 residential units in the existing building,
Upstairs, right.
upstairs and downstairs, right?
I thought
Yeah.
it was all residential.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
there
thought the
already
accessory-
I
was
thought I knew the
Oh,
layout.
2
residential.
units there.
No, you gotta go on the, don't look at the, don't never look
I
at
don't
that.
know if I have the
Do a
most
theme.
updated use schedule, but under CD, like it does say, single family or two-family, no, but multifamily is allowed by planning board, which would be
Under CV.
correct.
You gotta go here, always go here.
Right. Okay.
CV. Never look at
Yeah,
the
but there's the lot.
assessors.
I liked it, I thought it was
Right.
cool.
Yeah, so it's CV.
No, the original one, the red one.
Yeah. CV, blue.
Okay.
Yeah,
I stand corrected.
Let me show you.
It's an
No,
overlay.
it's a district.
It's a district.
Oh, district, so you have to see the districts.
Yeah. Mike, just make sure you never use the assessors.
Well,
Always the map, always the map.
I apologize for that. But I just think, I'm just balancing with the two.
No,
It's
that's a good point.
good-looking building. I think it's great, but I'm not sure that that was the intent. So, that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought the intent was to invite an increase in residential coexisting with small businesses. I guess I hadn't in my mind clarified that it was specifically to be retail.
That's how I read it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't gonna talk now, but I guess I'm just going this way now.
Yeah, might as well.
I also have a question about the parking. I'm sorry, I'm unclear. Are we doing 18 or 17?
17.
17. So you're looking for a special permit for going,
Over the 20%.
reducing by more than the 20%?
Correct.
Okay, that, I just got mixed up
And
in the middle.
and I can't do simple math in my head anymore, but if you allow me to
That's
grab
fine.
my cell phone, I could actually
It's
give you
not
the
50%,
percentage.
but
It's
not over,
It's not
over
50%, it certainly
but
isn't
it's not
50%.
20.
Okay.
Wait a minute. It's going 17 to 22?
Correct.
Or 5 to 22.
Divided by 22.
5 to
They're,
22.
they're
20, yeah,
gonna have up to
22%.
50%.
22%. Okay. All right, that was my only question. Mike?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I think it's quite consistent with what we've been trying to accomplish in CV, which is a mix of commercial and residential, and we finally have an example that actually does that. So, I'm good.
Oh, you know what, can I go back again? So this office will be an accessory to the main, an accessory office with the main business in the number 20, is that correct? Or will it be a separate business, distinct from the
It
business?
could be a separate business or part of the existing business. Right now, she expects it to be part of her existing business.
Okay. John?
I think it's an attractive design building that fits in well with the surroundings. I don't have any questions.
Before we move on, was there a discussion that at one time, the red house barn had a dwelling in it?
Yes, they said that the Red Barn had tenants at one time, both upstairs and downstairs, 2 units. So it's been a combination of different things over the years.
Do you have a
And,
timeframe as to when that was last?
hold
That one?
on one
Like an
sec.
artist lady living there, I thought.
It's a small building for 2 apartments.
They were small.
That's something to do every night, every day. You can't hear me, can you?
I'm deaf. Need a hearing aid.
You want to just submit that information with your supplemental?
Tim?
She said around 8 years ago. Up and down.
The cupola were at 40.
Tim Shanahan? Anything?
He's on Zoom, but he may not be with us.
Heard him snore.
All right.
All right,
Anything else? Anyone else have any other issues?
let's see.
Deidre, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't get it unmuted. I have no questions with that. I'm good with that.
I guess I do have another question. The impervious is going to be reduced by 600. Is that the green around the edges?
Nope, so the green around the edges is actually there. The reduction in impervious area comes from our proposed landscaping around the new structure itself. There's
Okay.
there's kind of a fenced-in, for
Yard?
lack of a better term, yard in here, and plus there's a couple of planting beds. Again, this is the garage,
Gotcha.
and there's a couple of planting beds out front. And so that's where the reduction in the impervious area comes from. This green space is existing.
Existing currently. Gotcha. And then the sewer, I know you said that there's a single connection and it's going to be required to be split, but in terms of the sewer usage?
So, yeah. So we're going to be submitting that to the DPW. That was some of the information that they asked for at the department head meeting. I can tell you that the new building for Title V flows is about 384 gallons per day. It's 110 gallons per day per bedroom. 3 bedrooms is 330 gallons per day, and office space is based on 75 gallons per day per 1,000 square feet. So we'll put that calculation together, get it over to DPW, along with some write-ups on the stormwater system itself. We've already started that information since last Tuesday's meeting. However, what we wanted to do was try to get your input and try to, put
Bring it
one
together.
fell swoop of revisions to the plan.
Sure.
But just to continue on, the sewer, again, per Ty cards, this is the existing building. The sewer now comes around here with number 20 connecting in right around here. So the new plan will show cut and cap what we asked for and a new sewer service. At the same time, again, waiting information from the fire protection engineer. If we need to upsize any type of new water service, we will show that on the plan per some of the comments that Michael had read into the record.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So shall we move to?
Well, let's see, I think first, you should probably consider opening the public hearing. I
yeah.
think this does require a public
There's
hearing.
a lot of abutters.
Yeah. the
I
whole
did have
town.
one more question.
Yeah.
Do you have any perspective views of what this would look like from the street? Because
It's pretty tall.
it is pretty tall with the couple out there.
That lot sits low.
It does sit low.
Yeah,
It does sit
that's why I was
low.
wondering if there are perspective.
Yeah, that's a good question, because
Pictures.
it is tall, 40 feet tall.
I believe that's the architectural package, yeah.
In the context of the surrounding
The
buildings?
context of the site. We could ask to get one of those done.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Any feedback from abutters, or have we got anything?
We can open the public hearing and see. Should we open the public hearing? Take a motion?
Well, you just go ahead and open it.
Oh, well, let's open it then.
It's open.
Anybody on Zoom? Evan?
No.
All right, in that case, I would move to continue the public hearing for our next meeting, where presumably all the little things will get worked out.
So at that one, we'll be looking for letters from DPW, letters about the water connection,
Yeah.
and a view shed from the street, taking in context the surrounding buildings, is that right?
What we typically try to do is provide a letter to the board for the file, kind of going comment by comment, what we've done to the plan and how we respond to it.
Perfect.
And we'd be happy to read that and go through the revised set of plans, but it's something nice to have for the file, just to show how we responded to each one of the comments that we received.
Just on the perspective, remember, the site is set down probably at least 5, 6, 7 feet. So it's like in a bowl
Right.
Yeah.
And right behind it is 9 North Road, right?
over on the backside of the bike trail.
Yeah.
I just mentioned that to see if the board, if you.
I think
if you-
Village Square is behind it, isn't it?
It's actually, yeah, I mean, I was at 9, and if you look through, you can see the red building. So it's, if you go directly behind it, number 9 is off to the left a little bit, and
Yeah.
Village Square is a little bit off to the right side, but yeah, it's up over the rail trail. Yeah.
Putting together the view shed simulation is a bit involved. It may take some time. So just seeing if the board truly needs or wants that.
I mean,
I personally don't.
we'll certainly be within the height restrictions allowed by zoning. That comes from the average of the grade, so we wouldn't be taking that from the top of the retaining wall, we would be taking that from along the edge of the building. I don't know if that helps either try to change your mind about a view of that or not, but we can certainly ask the architect to do that.
How tall is the current structure?
Less than 30.
Yeah, it's just a low roof.
But you can see it almost from here.
Yeah,
Like,
you can
it's
picture
like-
another 10, 20 feet.
Like, the question is like, we want to see perspective, how big is it from the front building? Because it does go down.
How tall is the
If
front building?
if the height is within
Probably
regulation,
45
I'm
feet.
not sure that we should
I think the
Right.
cupola brings
spend
it
a
above
lot
it.
of
I don't know
time
how that gets done.
Yeah,
worrying
but-
about it. I mean, it'd be nice to see the picture.
It is cute.
Because I like
I
to
wouldn't
see
get
the
rid-
I don't wanna
wouldn't-
say anything about
yeah, don't get rid of the cupola
I don't
because
have a
that goes
problem.
over the height, and actually, I like that.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's a good point. If it's within the regulated height restrictions, then it's kind of for
Yeah, we're
personal
good.
edification
Yeah.
to see it. We don't need that view shed.
So you do have a motion on the floor to continue the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. And that, what date will that be?
April 26th work, next meeting?
Sure.
Who's squeaky over there? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No, I'm doing it on purpose.
All right.
Great, thank you, appreciate your time, thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, so now we have new business.
Well, let's see, we have another continuation on,
Oh, we have to,
Rotten
right,
Road.
right,
We
right.
just
We
need
have
to-
to move to continue without discussion.
and
I
it's-
need a motion.
I would move to continue.
Second.
And
We have a date?
I understand from Evan that we probably expect some kind of action by the next meeting.
There should be resolution as to whether Lot 1 can be
done, yeah.
compliant or not.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now to new business, sorry about that. Items from the work session. And I think we've designated the policy things mostly to policy. I think maybe we should talk about how the board does the board's business. I don't know if we should defer that and reconvene as a work session for a few minutes after we complete the regular business meeting.
Might I suggest that some of that may come out of our looking at the procedures.
I was actually just going to recommend that we
Yeah.
could probably take care of that as
Yes.
part of that policies
Yeah, I
and
would agree.
procedures.
Well, there's a couple things I would like to clarify that I don't know that they necessarily have to be policy, but, I have some thoughts about our timetable of when we get things versus when they get distributed to us versus when we consider them. I'm planning on looking at the agendas before they go out, so I would like if the paperwork to support if the agenda's gonna go out on Friday, I'd wanna maybe look at a draft of it, if that would be realistic. Do you think, Evan, maybe on Wednesday? So then we would need to have all the submissions by Wednesday for the meeting a week hence. I think we could say that things that seem not substantive, if they come in later, maybe could be added on, but then we get into where's the gray of what's substantive. I mean, we've had a lot of things added on in the past couple of years that I've seen, and I'm not really a fan of that. Like, I don't always have time to look at things
It's
that come
always
in on
day
Monday.
of. We're getting
Right,
it day
yeah.
of or the
And I
day
know other
before.
boards don't do that. I think they have a pretty
Rigid.
line. I mean, we've got Virginia here from the select board, maybe she, like, I know, like, they've, in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, or, like, I think if they don't get it at least 2 days before when the agenda is posted, they don't discuss it, and I know other boards do that, and I agree with you. I think that we should maybe kind of follow that.
Like a
And
hard
everything's
deadline,
attached
is
to
that what
the
you guys
agenda,
do?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that, Chris?
And everything's attached to the agenda and
Right.
linked from that
Right,
agenda.
right.
Go ahead.
Virginia Crocker-Timmons, I'm on the select board. So our meetings are on Mondays, so our agenda has to be published by Thursday afternoon. And typically what happens, or what happened at least when I was chair, was Paul and I would review the draft agenda on Wednesday by noon. It goes out to the rest of the board Wednesday afternoon, and they have to turn comments in by Thursday morning. Any attachments or submissions to that agenda by presenters, we asked that they be turned into the town manager's office no later than Wednesday, because it takes, our packets are built a little bit different than yours, but it takes time
Yeah.
for that, just the mechanism of building the packet, and it's a big administrative burden when things start coming in at the last minute. So that's our timetable for a Monday meeting. So it's draft agenda Wednesday, any attachments in by Wednesday, and publish on Thursday.
In your experience, have you had to fluctuate at all for anything? Do you have any exceptions to that hard, fast timeline?
If there've been exceptions, or somebody says, is working it out directly with the town manager's office, gee, I can't get the attachment until Thursday morning or whatever, that would be fine. We never review attachments as part of the draft agenda review. It's just the topics without the attachments.
Right.
Thank you for that input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe that's for a Monday meeting, ours is a Wednesday, so maybe we could push it forward and say draft agenda on Thursday, final Thursday noon, comments back by Friday morning at the start of business, and then
And then put the package together.
What comments are you looking for? We have
if
never
anyone
done that.
if anyone has I don't know why I don't know if
That's for them, but I don't know
Right.
with us, is you
Yeah.
as the chair should set the
Yeah,
agenda
okay,
with
so that's fine, so
Evan,
we won't have comments,
and then-
that's a good point.
and then publish it to the board with all
Yeah.
the backup.
Yeah, we basically have two sources of material for our agendas. One is public filings and requests that come in
Yeah,
for
I mean, like,
regulatory action.
if we want to add something, we could always just email Deirdre,
Yeah,
like on Wednesday.
Exactly,
Go, hey, can we put this on
and
the
Evan
agenda?
takes care of that, and that's just fine. And the other piece of it is things that we decide to do ourselves, like the work sessions and policies.
Or things that we're looking
And those
from
we
the
ha-
prior
those we
meeting.
have those we have much better control over, so.
So on the timing of submissions, I'd like to talk about that more. I'm not suggesting this evening, whether that's part of a full board or the procedures and policies committee. I would strongly encourage you not to be very rigid on that.
Okay.
If it's substantial information, maybe we can define that. If it's de minimis or if it's minor in nature, I'll give you an example. What if a department letter comes
Right.
in late? That's nothing to do with the applicant, but
Right.
in essence, you're punishing the applicant if you're not going to proceed with the hearing.
True.
What if an abutter? Are abutter comments part of that deadline? Are we now going to put abutter comments attached to the agendas? So there's a variety of things that need to be discussed. They all have pros and cons. At the end of the day, it's the planning board who sets the pacing of the hearing. There's nothing says that you need to be rushed. If somebody shows up, you can acknowledge that it's showing up the night of the meeting. We'll listen to you, but we're not taking any action on it. So there's a variety of ways to manage that situation. But, having a hard deadline where nothing can come in, more often than not, I think the board will come to the same conclusion that much of that is minor in nature and not substantially relevant to an overall decision.
I'm not sure I agree with
I
that.
disagree, too.
Looking at
I
tonight,
wasn't looking to get
Yeah,
into it
yeah,
tonight.
no, but
but looking at tonight, we've got the sustainability checklist that I saw in the packet tonight that wasn't distributed ahead of time.
Well, that's a good example. I mean, you guys, I gave it to you in a hard copy, you guys didn't even mention it. So maybe it's not that important to the board. I mean, this is what it's
Haven't
like,
even read it.
There's a lot of information that you guys get as part of your submissions.
You mean
Some
the
of it
stuff
you
that
don't
was here
even-
on the table?
What's that?
You mean it was on the table
Yes, I
tonight?
printed a
It's
hard
in the-
copy in your,
Right, but, I mean, I'm going off the agenda, I'm not going
I'll
off.
give you
the-
your packet.
When I go through the packet, I'm looking for what's on the agenda next. I'm not going through the packet looking to
No,
match it.
the reason I printed it out is because it was a late arrival. And it was the first one of its kind per the new regulation, so I thought the board
Yeah, I
would
didn't
be
even
interested in it.
I
in
didn't see
seeing
it.
yeah,
And then my other
No, it was
concern is that
interesting.
for letters that are highly technical, like the DPW ones often are with the stormwater,
yeah.
I can't listen to that and comprehend it. I need it written and I need the hard copies.
I'd
but
like
if-
to have those copies, too.
I agree. I just think if the DPW comes with a recommendation, they're the experts of, I'm not a civil engineer licensed, but they're civil engineers, and that's who we refer to. So if they come and say that they approve the project based off of these criterias, then I think unless, we don't have a peer review, gonna do that. So I'm not sure of your background. I don't know if everyone on the table here can understand some of those reports. I think we have to look at what they're calling out that they're an objection to, or they want us to
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
as a decision to
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, but a lot of that is, I mean, it's buried in some of the technical information, and I need to see it.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I'm not gonna try and second guess the DPW.
No, but-
on their engineering concerns. So I guess that brings me to one of the things that was on my list, which is when we have outstanding things from them, from the DPW or from the water department, I would like to have it codified that at the end, we get a letter back saying concerns that we raised in our prior letter have been addressed to our satisfaction, and we're comfortable with this project going forward. I'd like that loop to
You
be
always do.
closed.
You always get a clean letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just by hearing a letter, I don't know, I can't even tell what those concerns are. And that's my point, is that it would be nice to see it ahead of time, before the meeting, and to have it in writing, so that I can see what those concerns are.
Usually we can see the letters. I didn't see them.
So if a
on
letter
this one.
came in after the posting, I would print it, and which I've been doing. But this evening, on one of the hearings, you didn't even have a letter from DPW, but yet you opened the hearing, you took
Well, we
testimony.
talked to the DPW about it.
No, I'm just saying, but there was no letter.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean.
What if it was the water district that didn't submit a letter? So I think my point is that the board understands that they're not going to open a hearing, close a hearing, and make a decision if they don't have a letter from a technical department.
Right.
And that's okay. If the applicant understands, the board understands, the public understands that you're likely going to continue, so that staff can reach out to make sure that the district intended to submit a letter, or give them extra time to submit a letter. I'm just saying, hard, fast, like, what does that mean? Does that mean if something isn't submitted, the hearing is shut down, we're not proceeding?
No, we
You
just
have
won't make a
you have to
determination.
give careful
automatically
consideration as to what that
I mean,
means.
that's what we use our continuances
So,
for in general.
But if we're gonna continue anyway, why not just wait till we have all the letters?
Like, and why waste the time?
You
Like,
know what
why
I
don't
mean?
we,
It
like,
seems
why don't
like
we
we
have
do a
a,
lot of that, and I get that. It
Yeah,
seems like we
that's
do a
true.
lot of that.
yeah, and like.
We like get so close to saying we're gonna go for a vote and we're still waiting on a letter. You know what I mean?
Well, on
Kinda
the
put
other,
the
on the
cart
other
before
thing
the
we
horse.
can do there, which is often done, and I think is very effective much of the time, is you simply condition.
Condition it, yeah.
I mean, you say, okay, we haven't got the full clean letter yet. We know it's coming, and we know the proponent is talking to the water department and to the DPW. We know we're gonna get one. We can do our decision, condition it on that letter being submitted.
And the whole letter thing, needs to be clarified, and maybe at a future work session, we can clarify that. But simply stated, if the water district never submitted a letter, it's perfectly fine. They have their own rules and regulations. So the reason that we distribute it to all these departments is that it's good business practice to have everything shown on a plan. It's also an FYI for applicants. But much of what you receive in the letters is not jurisdictional to the planning board. For example, most of the fire department letter is under the fire code. They don't need to put that in there. They put it in there as an FYI to the applicant. You're not literally approving the NFPA statute.
Yeah.
When the district submits their letters, they don't tell you anything. They say, we have concerns, come meet with the commissioners. The reason they do that is because they're not telling the planning board or the applicant what they're going to approve. And same with DPW. They have their own sewer regulations, their own drainage regulations. So it's not as if the planning board is approving those things. So,
But if there's a problem, like for instance, let's take the fire, right? Like say there was an
course,
issue, like
no,
say
of course.
they'd have a plan
It's
and
your
they
job
comes
to
there and
resolve those.
we say we like the plan as is. And then there's something wrong with, the fire code or whatever, and they have to like change the plan. Then they have to come back in front of us.
but I understand, but that's their burden.
No, I get it, but like, I'm just trying to be efficient with everybody's time. Like, it'd be nice to know if there's, like, if we can get at least the preliminary letters with the applicant at the time, like, just to be efficient.
And normally we do that, right?
Then we'll know if there's like, oh, this is a big issue, they may have to change the whole building, right? Like, let's hold off versus let's approve on the condition that they fix it, right? Like, it's
Well, it
just helpful
depends what
to-
the thing is.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, right? Like, if we have the initial letters at this time, and we kind of like communicate this to developers to say, listen, you need, in order for you to have a first meeting, we need to have all of this information in. That way we can get,
We do
I
that.
just want to.
We do that. The first hearing, all the information's in, normally letters are at the table, they're posted on the agenda. Everything that's required to be submitted is typically submitted, and it's posted on the agenda. It's once hearings go on for a lengthy period of time, and there's multiple revisions and so forth and so on, yeah, that's fraught for problems.
But Evan, none of the letters were posted on the agenda tonight.
No, I'm aware of that.
That's what's just throwing Chris off right now.
I'm aware of that. So Becky went on vacation on Friday. She was in on Friday, I was out on Friday. So I apologize that some of the agenda didn't capture. For example, I wasn't aware that Chelmsford Street even had any letters, because I had emailed them today, asking if they received any letters. So yeah, we're not perfect, and we're not gonna be perfect. And so, I'm
But
telling you
that's the
that
goal.
right now.
That's the goal, yeah.
And if you're looking for, if that's the level of, if that's the level you're trying to hold us to, we're gonna make mistakes. There's gonna
I
be,
think the other thing I would say is that you can encourage efficiency by demanding you have everything right at the beginning. But that's also inefficient in some ways, particularly for large projects where things are going to evolve somewhat as the project goes on. And the ideal is somewhere in the middle, and it's going to be different for every project.
And I'm not saying everything has to be in right away. I'm just saying that if we're discussing it at the meeting, I work full-time, so I need
Yes,
some
you and me
time to
both.
actually read through it over the weekend.
I think we all work full-time.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
I know.
I'm part-time. I'm part-time.
Good for you.
But I need some time to
wish I was
review the
retired.
information
Oh,
that we're
I-
actually going to be discussing.
I
I don't want to
agree.
be discussing
I
something that
agree.
I just
Well,
get.
these two examples from tonight, other than the department letters, everything was there,
Yeah.
right?
And the department
The
letters, we
sustainability
really
thing
aren't
wasn't-
Honestly, once you
Okay,
hear
so,
all
I mean,
these.
again,
part of our jurisdiction.
It's your business, right? If the board wants to, moving forward, hold up because the sustainability checklist isn't in on the agenda, that's your business.
I'm not
Right,
saying
no,
hold
I
it up.
think,
I'm just
I
saying,
think-
I don't want to
brand
be
new.
we'll
discussed.
strive to have everything
Yeah,
in.
exactly.
No, it does hold it up, though, that's what happened.
It's brand new,
Little
so
bit,
some
but most of the
applicants aren't
time
even,
we-
they don't
we
even know what to
approve
do.
with-
We work our way
Have
through.
we ever denied a project
No.
because of a letter?
No, no. You're right.
I don't know.
What do you mean
Remember-
by a letter?
From any
Approval.
department letter, I don't think we've ever denied
Well, they've worked it
a
out.
project because of a letter from a particular department.
They don't have
Like where
irreconcilable
that pinch zone was, they're
differences.
gonna work that out.
We might
They
not
have
have
the
approved,
room, you know what I mean?
might
on
have
that
delayed
project.
it till it gets worked out, but I don't think we've said no because the water department does not approve this project.
And they always.
And while you have the legal authority to deny a project that has an incomplete submission, you've never done that either.
Right.
You usually tell them, it's not complete, this is what we
We'll
want.
fix it, yeah.
I mean, tonight you asked for a perspective, the regulations don't even require a perspective.
Right.
Well, then we rescinded that request.
No, so I'm just, you have to be cognizant as to the, the procedures and protocols you're putting in place within the context of, you have an applicant, and applicants are all different kinds. Some are small, some are big, some have a lot of money, some don't. So, I think in my opinion, it's like a case by case, based upon the scope and scale. Your regulations set the bare minimum. And what I'm telling you is more often than not, when it's advertised on an agenda, the substantial majority of the required information has been filed.
Yeah.
But I'm not,
All right,
You're
so
not
we're gonna
gonna-
send
I'm
out
not
the
gonna deny an
agenda with as
application.
many of the attachments as we can.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah, yeah.
striving for perfection on Friday at noon, and everything should strive to be in
Yeah.
by
That would be
Thursday.
a help
And
to-
I'd like to look at
to
it
us.
on Thursday.
Can we also include the presentations in that, too?
If they're
If they're-
in, I
if
would
they're
hope they
available.
would be in.
so
by
like
then.
tonight, they emailed them to me this afternoon.
Yeah, that happens a lot,
Right,
right?
and you saw the presentations, they're not really presentations. River Neck Road is the anomaly. What you saw tonight is a typical presentation. They're showing 3 or 4 visuals with, colored, and the green space is colored in for easier presentation purposes. Those normally come in the day of. Could the board establish a hard policy that they have to be in on the Thursday to be posted on? Sure you could.
Or can you at least forward them?
Well, how about if we request it?
No, yeah, you can do that,
See
sure.
how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if,
Just
I
turn the
reminded,
screws a little
Evan,
bit
if you
on 'em.
get them on the day of, if you can forward them to the board, just because it's easier to look at here than it is up there.
Yep, I can do that.
Just so I can pull it up while I'm looking at it, if you don't mind. I just find it a lot easier.
That's great.
Yeah, because that was up there and I couldn't find it anywhere on the laptop, you know what I mean? Like that presentation.
I just
Right.
can't, I have a hard time seeing
Yeah,
it.
me too. I couldn't really.
Okay. Couple more things that I wanted to discuss. One is our communication with, like, the public. So in addition to the public meeting issues, or the open meeting issues, I mean, I personally would like to know what other people think about having a policy that we don't post in public media about planning board business. I think that would be,
well, we have an obligation, both to be impartial and to appear impartial. And I think that's important, and I think over the last year, it's gotten a little bit muddled. I think we need to be more careful there. Now, exactly what being more careful there means, we need to discuss some more. But I think
fine
that's a
with
very
that.
good point.
Yeah, I bite my tongue online.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, we shouldn't say anything. We should not say anything online about anything that's in front of the board,
Right.
that's what I think.
or about the board, or anything about opinions or
Or-
anything. So
Yeah.
all should be said
Even
here
if they
we
say
have anything
something
to
about
say.
you, you just gotta take it to say.
No,
Yeah.
That's why I ignore
I mean,
that
I don't,
website.
as a policy, I don't even use Facebook.
I
I
do.
don't go there. And I think I'm going to stick to that, even though, well, I occasionally wonder what's going on. If worse comes to worse, I ask one of my kids.
I'm not on social media at all, so.
Yeah.
Non-issue with you.
Boy, you're an anachronism like me.
1980s guy, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Do we
Okay.
have any annual goals and objectives besides
Surviving
redoing
the
our
year.
policies and
The policies are a big
procedures?
one.
I think
Yeah, the policies will be good.
we got some
Policies
work
are
to
big
do.
enough.
But I think Chris and I can probably cook some stuff up. And we're going to have a third member, you said?
George,
Yeah,
we
I'm
already
gonna
nominated.
try and recruit somebody.
Yeah,
unless
see if you can
want
get
to.
George. George would be good.
Okay.
You've got, I suppose Nancy could do it.
What about one of the Lunas?
Pam Armstrong could do it.
One of the Lunas
Sue-
would be really good.
I was thinking of, when he was sitting there, I was gonna point to him,
Who?
so he's right there.
Lunas.
Luna. He
Luna.
was
You
in it.
referred
Yeah,
to a-
Luna be good.
Or
I thought
Sue
you referred to
Carter.
from a board member.
Well, he was on the
Yeah, I
zoning
was
board.
I
talking
think
about
a
a former board member.
might be
He was
more.
on-
Because I
Yeah,
feel like they would know the
The
policies
zoning
and
board is
procedures.
not equivalent to the planning board.
Yeah.
For that
But
matter,
sometimes
neither
you
is
need
the select
someone,
board.
you know, also,
Tho-
you know,
those-
dependent,
those-
too.
Those two boards would be a lot different if they had to deal with the Riverneck Road.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, I mean, in my mind, I was thinking Pam Armstrong, Sue Carter, George Zaharoulis, as, I mean, I don't really
Yeah,
know.
those are the kinds.
Those are the people I call up when I have a question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, me too.
From a,
George.
Dinner.
from Deirdre, from a diversity perspective, can I recommend Sue Carter?
Yeah, I have a lot of good.
From a
to say about it.
diversity?
Yeah,
I'll
three
tell you-
white males versus
Oh,
a
okay.
little bit of a
But I'll,
diverse
but I'll bet you
perspective.
$20 you can't talk her into it. I
Yeah.
wish you would, because I think she'd be great.
She's also an engineer, so.
She is an
that's-
engineer, so that's
The
a
can
applicant's
read a plan.
perspective.
Yeah.
She might.
she might.
Hopefully
Maybe
she
she will. I'll see, I'll do my best to talk her into
Okay.
it. In which case, I'll give you the $20. We'd all be better off.
Okay, do people have any thoughts about whether we should have or continue to have Zoom availability for members? I mean, I feel like it's a good thing to have. I feel like it should be used ideally, Tim, I'm sorry, more, it shouldn't be the standard. I mean, I think that we work better when we're together.
Yeah, that's true of all groups.
Oh, I agree, but I think there's certain circumstances where a few
Sure.
of us have dialed in from being out.
Look, you
Of
got seven,
course.
yeah, seven of us
We've
are
been a
sitting
commitment.
here.
We've either had a work commitment or a
course. Yeah,
vacation
of
with
course.
people have
Traveling the world.
Cruise.
have dialed in, which is awesome.
From
So I think that's
sandy,
great. But it
sandy
would be great in
beaches with
person.
fruity rum drinks.
I think we should encourage ourselves to be here in person.
Yes.
Yeah,
There was
I
actually
agree.
some text on this in the Massachusetts, I believe it's open meeting law text, so we can put that in with the policies as well.
Yeah, that might be a good place to
Because
look.
there is I forget what the exact text is, but it's something about there are actual reasons that people should be remoting in as opposed to live, and they're enumerated.
That'd
So,
be good to hear.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah.
so we can add those to the policies.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to work on that. I gather you're taking notes.
Yep.
And then another
full
thing
list.
that I wanted to address from Chris's extensive comments about suggestions. I've never joined a board and came with my list of suggestions, but I feel like the question of who discusses and deliberates, I personally feel like anyone who's eligible to vote, including the alternate who may be called upon to vote if someone else can't vote, should be eligible to deliberate. But someone who's either mullined out or recused, I feel like should either leave the room or sit in the audience. And if they speak as a member of the public. That's my personal.
Yeah, and I will say, I did not apply this last year. I was aware that we had in the regulations something that basically said what you just said, more or less. I think in retrospect, and particularly because I think impartiality and the appearance of impartiality are so important to how this board functions, that I think we should.
So last year, I specifically asked town council whether I should be, wasn't part of, right? And town councils, I have that absolute right to
I do not
participate.
believe you have it. We should
Unfortunately,
investigate it.
council didn't ask staff, because I would have told them about the policy.
But I mean, it came to me. I mean, I'm going to take
And I
this
wasn't
one.
aware
I'm
of
going to own
the
this one.
inquiry.
What,
You were
Right,
on
just
the
going
email.
forward.
Isn't the policy that Ann McGuigan and the board developed,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
it is,
doesn't
and I basically
doesn't
chose to
refer
ignore
this-
it.
This issue?
And I'm not so sure that that was a good thing for the board. and that's why I bring it up. I mean, I
brought
own
it
that
up.
decision, I made it myself.
But I
That's
brought it
voting
up.
eligibility, that's not discussion.
Oh, yeah, voting eligibility is something completely different.
But I feel like the deliberating body should be those eligible to vote.
Or potentially
Someone
in the
who's-
case
So
of.
we need to just, because I specifically sent an email to
Okay,
Paul.
I'm not talking
having-
about what
Well, then
happened.
let's-
No, but I mean, we need to make sure we're,
Litigate the past. I'm trying to
need to
make.
look at what the law states.
I'm requesting that we have a policy going forward. I'm not trying to relitigate what's happened in the past.
I just want to make
Because
sure
there
that
was
we're
one
not.
standard last year, and there was a previous
Oh,
standard put in place by the board.
Anything
And so now
we
I'm
do in this space, we will have to
I just
run
want to
by
make sure
Paul.
we're following mass state law, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we will make
We
sure
can't
that
have
we are.
policies that contradict
Yeah, we're not
what
gonna, we're
the,
gonna try not to break the law.
right,
Yeah.
that follow what the law
Yeah.
allows on how to do this. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, well, and my understanding from 14 years of this was that in fact, the state law does not require what you're suggesting. But let's get a clear
It might
answer.
allow it, but not require it.
Right.
But
I
I'm
think
suggesting that
that's- I
we
think that's
don't
what it
need
is.
to allow it as a body.
And the policy doesn't allow it.
And the policy doesn't. So either,
Where does it say that?
yeah,
This paragraph right
yeah,
here.
right there.
Regulatory permitting related to zoning permits and subdivision permits, only those board members who are eligible to vote shall be permitted to participate in deliberations and final voting.
Yeah.
But I would take away
We
the
need to clarify the word
seven-person thing.
deliberations.
Because the seven-person doesn't let the person who's the alternate deliberate.
Well, no, I think-
Because they
I
might
think-
be eligible eventually, so they
No,
should be able.
I think that implicitly includes the alternate.
No,
Somebody
it
who could
says there's no
potentially-
more than 7 people can deliberate at a time.
Well,
But if you look at the last statement,
yeah.
it says all are able to participate during public hearings.
Right, all are able.
The public
Without-
hearing is the part at the
you can go out
microphone
and
where
talk.
you go and speak as a member of the public,
You can't speak from a.
but you're not speaking as a member of the board.
I'm not sure that says that.
No, I don't
Well,
think
that's what I'm
that's what it's
suggesting.
We
When
can
you
interpret
convene the
it.
policy meeting, you can ask a
Yeah.
fellow board member why this was adopted, and they'll
Yeah.
explain it to
I'll
you.
tell you what, well, let's talk about this one and try to
Mm-hmm.
unwind it. Yeah,
I'd like to be that priority number 2.
okay, well, we'll look at it. Hey, when are we getting together?
I don't know.
Okay.
Find an
Is there
evening,
anything
we'll do
else? We have a minutes to approve.
The minutia.
And schedule the next work session. Are we going to do some night right now, or are we done for the night?
I'm toast.
Can I just have a quick question on the meetings, just so I can plan? I just want to make sure that, can we just kind of just talk about when we're meeting, the next 2 or 3 meetings through May?
Yep.
I just want to make sure I have that.
April
available.
26th, May 10th. If everybody make May 10th?
Yep.
May 24th, June 14th, June 28th,
Okay.
July 12th, and July 26th.
Okay, just
Okay.
basically second and fourth.
Yep.
Every month going on.
Didn't we used to take some time off in July?
Yeah, I might have a problem with the
Yep.
26th.
You've reduced down to 1 regulatory meeting
Yeah.
in July and August, and sometimes you've used that second meeting as a work session.
Might I suggest that we wait on that decision until we see what our agenda's likely to be?
Yeah.
And that's usually what guided it. Usually the agenda gets thin in August.
So as part of
Not
your
this year,
discussion
but-
about scheduling a work session, for your 26th meeting, DPW is going to come in and do some sort of presentation.
DPW 101.
Yep.
They're going to do a brain flush.
You continue these 2 hearings from this evening. New hearing opening will be off Turnpike, which is the sister lot at 200 Turnpike, the last lot at the corner of Mill and Turnpike. It's the empty lot at the bottom of the hill.
Interesting.
And then final plans for 270 Billerica Road.
That's going to be a busy meeting.
So I would expect plenty of interested people for 200 Turnpike. So I don't know if you want to start at 6:30 and do a work session, or if you want to just schedule a special meeting for a work session.
Did you say
We do a
270
works-
Bill Ricca?
Yeah, we'll be coming in for final plans.
Final plans, okay.
Can we do a work session from 6:30 to 7:15? And start the regular meeting at 7:15?
Sure.
And maybe, if you guys are miracle workers, we can have something on the open meeting.
Ah, she's putting on the pressure.
Well, I mean, I don't know, what else do we have on our work session list?
Well, I think
We had a
that's, I
really
think
long
this
list before.
project is a really good start, and that may guide.
But it might be too soon to have any outcome from this
Right,
project.
yeah.
So what else do we have from our old work session list? That
Or you
people,
could, or you could consider DPW as part of your work
That's,
session.
yeah, that's.
well,
an
that's
answer.
true. All right, let's do that.
And I'd like to at least put down on, for our future work sessions, at how in-depth should we get during the applicability phase?
Yeah.
Up front.
It's a very good question.
Because
that's a
there's some
real fuzzy.
projects that have got denied, but they've been painful all the way through, that got approved in the applicability. So that's the question I just want to ask, you get the board's discussion, is how deep do you want to go through the applicability?
Those are
If
really
it's
good
one or
questions.
two meetings, or does it need to be, or is there a checklist you want to go through? So that we get some of our initial comments out right away, instead of just approving it and then going into a battle for months. I don't know.
The whole point the whole point of the applicability is to avoid battling
Right.
during the public hearing.
I agree.
Where you're not inclined, or your gut doesn't tell you that it's approvable.
Right.
That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
And if applicability is a pain point, then just delete it, if you don't want to deal with
Maybe we can
the-
do that at the next meeting, because of the new members too, at the board here, could understand it a little further, plus some of the experienced ones can re-enhance some of what we've been interpreting.
Are you proposing delete?
I'm not proposing
No,
to
but was
delete it.
that-
I'm saying that if the board in the community is conflicted with the whole idea and concept of applicability, and you don't like that conceptual approval, then just delete it. If the board can figure out and embrace the concept in theory, it's really productive, because if used properly, River Neck Road would never have received applicability. Under the assumption that the majority of the board knew that it wasn't the right project for the right location.
Can I ask,
And yet, as the public hearing evolved, that was crystal clear.
was there enough information at the time? I wasn't around for the applicability side, but
I feel like
is
the
there enough
guidelines for
information?
applicability are very broad. And
Yes.
so to deny applicability it's hard to do,
Yeah.
based on
You
the
wouldn't-
applicability
Per councils, you
guidelines.
would never deny, but you wouldn't grant a friendly applicability.
Okay.
Well, I mean-
It'd be like a negative vote, but we're issuing applicability.
Well, remember that there are two kinds of applicability, and we need to be very careful to separate them. There is overlay-driven applicability. That's one thing, and that's a bylaw requirement. And clearly, the applicability at that stage is broader than what you may ultimately approve. And the second is a general applicability. When you have a large project, doesn't necessarily need overlay status, but they come in and throw it at you and see if the spaghetti sticks to the wall. And, yeah.
The River Neck Road applicability, it worked, but I think only a couple of members specifically articulated real concerns. Mike, you were one of them.
Mike,
But it wasn't, it was one or two or three. The majority of the board did not send as strong of a message within applicability. So it was, at worst case, it could have been interpreted as neutral. I need five votes, and only two members of the planning board gave specific negative feedback.
Yeah.
If the majority of the board, 4, 5, 6 members, felt strongly that it was the wrong project for the wrong location, applicability is the time to say that, because that sends a very clear message, and they likely would have proceeded in a very different approach.
I think we brought up the size of the
Oh,
building.
no
right
question
away.
it was brought up,
Right away.
but I don't think it may have been 2 or 3 members. I don't think it
I
was the
remember, Mike, because I
entire.
was here, remember, Mike, you brought up specifically the sensitivity of the number of
Yeah. With all
bays.
that being said,
Yeah.
applicants
that
are
was-
out, they'll
You
do what
brought
they
that
think
up.
they need to do or want to do.
So that's.
And it resulted in
Apply
a
for
reduction
special
in that
permit. We
particular
have to say
case.
it's applicable,
Right.
right? We have to, right?
The applicability, council has advised you never to deny an applicability, because you're not taking a deep dive. But conceptually, you can grant a not so positive applicability with lots of caution, which is what you did.
Well, yes, I'm just trying to understand how that plays out. So you get the comments from the board that are positive and negative, but then when you take the vote, you want it to be a positive vote.
You want to issue
So
applicability,
you
is
do.
what council's saying.
So you're sending them.
Mixed
Okay,
message.
so it's a mixed message in my point. That's what I'm trying to debate, saying,
Yeah,
if
and
we're
if
not
you are-
ready to decide on applicability, we should continue it to the next meeting.
You could do that.
Because it seems like we always get to applicability and we just dot the i's, cross the t's and say, oh, it's approved.
You
And
could
then we
do that.
then
You
we
could
get into a
continue.
battle.
You could continue. In my opinion, it's, because the projects that come in under the overlays are usually larger or more complicated, engineering-wise, environmentally, the applicability aspect of that process is a good one. But it all comes down to the board. I mean, if the board doesn't think it's the right project for the right location, based upon very conceptual information, it's your gut. Then you send them a clear message saying, you know, we don't conceptually like this project. We don't think it's the right project for the right location.
But it's not really a clear message if you're saying that and then granting applicability.
The applicability, so council has advised not to deny it, not to outright deny an applicability. He's saying that based upon the notion that it's not a data-driven process. And it's not supposed to be a data-driven process. You're not reviewing traffic, you're not reviewing stormwater, you're not reviewing parking at any level, you're not taking public comment.
It's superficial, yeah.
Exactly. But he's indicated, and you've done this, you've issued a positive applicabilities with a list of cautions.
Or concerns.
Concerns and cautions. If those concerns and cautions were amplified by a majority of the board, rather than one or two members of the board, I think that's interpreted a lot differently by an applicant.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
I understand.
But then would it also make sense then to take those concerns and cautions into the public hearing and say, look, these were the
Mike's done that.
concerns?
You did that during Riverneck.
And he did that in Central Square.
Sure. So that's my point, right? To me, that's the benefit of applicability. You're issuing a written applicability with cautions and disclaimers. You're proceeding at your own risk. You've gotten a straw poll, so to speak, from the board.
Okay.
Now you apply, and whatever we brought up as cautions and disclaimers during applicability, we're going to bring them up again if they're not addressed, which is exactly what you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, good.
And then, well, do we get a new bylaw book this year coming, or?
So I can print everybody. I gave, John has a new one, Chris has a new one, and Anita has a new one. I will give everybody else, I'll print out new ones for everybody else.
Okay.
Did you intentionally get it not bound?
Yes, I'm gonna buy a binder, and I'm gonna put it in a
Yeah, I would
binder.
like that too. Or maybe 3-hole punch it.
Is that
I mean, I can 3-hole punch my own.
I have a whole bunch at home.
Yeah, I just as soon have mine bound. That,
You-
know, with
you
a
like the way we
spiral
bound it?
binding.
You
Yeah,
like the way it
spiral
comes-
binding works for me.
Okay.
Mine.
You know
Did
what,
we
I'll take
approve
it
the
bound
minutes
too.
yet?
I'll take it bound, because it only has to last another year. I mean, it keeps,
Every November, I think we get new ones.
Yeah,
right. I'd like a new one.
all right.
Did we approve the minutes?
Not
Make
yet.
a motion to
no.
approve minutes.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
I'd like to make another motion.
Second.
To adjourn.
Second.